good? Okay, it is 6:02, so I'll call the business meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee to order. The first item of business is going into executive session pursuant to RIGL 42464 for discussion of item 2, sessions pertaining to potential litigation / legal advice and collective bargaining pursuant RIGL 42465A2, ESTO v. NKSD, parentheses RIDE 23014K, RIGL 42465A2, and NEA NK negotiations, custodial union request. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. So we'll go into executive session. We're back. Back into order to we're going to reconvene into open session. So please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you so much. Roll call, Joni.
Erin Earl.
Here.
Robert Case.
Here.
Jennifer Hoskins. Here. Jennifer Lima. Here. Thomas Briety.
Here.
Christine LaPierre. Gabriel Anthony. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. On the calendar?
Okay, so we have Tuesday, April 4th and Tuesday, April 18th, our next school committee business meeting. On Monday, April 3rd, we have a policy subcommittee meeting. And on Tuesday, March 28th, we will be having school committee office hours at the town hall. That's the first floor conference room from 6:30 to 7:30.
Okay, thank you so much. So the next item on the agenda is presentations and recognitions. And so we're very excited to invite up Mr. Richard Garland, who's a teacher in business entrepreneurship, finance, and economics, to honor the amazing DECA students that are here. So if you actually want to come right over here, you can use the podium.
Hi, well, thank you for inviting us. I'm here with about 20 some odd of our DECA members of 111 largest DECA chapter in the state. Just a little bit about DECA. I see some new faces here. DECA is a worldwide association of young professionals, entrepreneurs, and business professionals. And it's about 20,000 strong, right, both at the college level and high school level. So I'm here with some of the first and second place and third place winners tonight. And they worked really hard for many months to compete. Now, we just got back on February 10th. We did what's called the CDC. We competed in the CDC. That's over 400 students in Rhode Island that are chapters with various high schools. I'm proud to say that on the statistics, out of 99 of our members that went up to Providence to compete in industry venues, 29 came in first place, 13 came in second place. That's a total of 42, or 43% of our population of members. And then if you count third place winners, 57 medalists, first, second, and third place. So I'm here with, thank you. So to give you an idea, all the folks here, most of them here, are on their way to Orlando, Florida, to compete in the International Career Development Conference with a backdrop of about 20,000 other members worldwide. So I'd like to just introduce you real fast. We have, for Apparel, Accessories, and Marketing Series, Mary Kate Hennis. Business Services, Business Services Operations, Everett Cower, Natalie Wicker. And Buying and Merchandising Team Decision Making, Delaney and Lydia Turner couldn't make it tonight. But for Finance Operations, we have Aiden Hagman and Zachary Hagman. Finance Operations, Lily Cushman, Alyssa DiBenedetto, and Charles Wright, who couldn't make it. Financial Literacy Project, that's a project management competition. Josh Chen, Catherine Maloney, and Jack McGinnis. Financial Services Team Decision Making, William Harrington and Zach Horowitz-Smith. Hospitality Tourism Professional Selling Event, Mackenzie North. Mackenzie is my president of the DECA. Last year, she won a scholarship for the Marriott Foundation. She's trying again for this year. And Mackenzie, you were one of the few, I think, ever to make the finals in Mercedes-Benz Arena in Atlanta from Rhode Island. We had two others from North Kingstown, too. I think we're the only ones ever made it to the finals. All right. And you're going to get us the glass this year, right, Mackenzie? Okay. All right. Hotel Lodging Management, Individual Series, Lyndon Rogers couldn't make it. He's working. Integrated Marketing Campaign Event, Brendan Donahue. Liam McCarthy was supposed to come, but Sophia Ticconian is here. Integrated Marketing, Bonnie O'Flaherty, Audrey Paxton. And then we have marketing communications. My secretary was Sydney Allen. Principals of Business Administration and Management, Thea Carr. Principals of Marketing, Jacqueline Blair. Professional Selling, Consulting, Isabella Jadone. And Quick Service Restaurant Management, Hannah Hadari. Hannah has been voted, this is really exemplary, Hannah has been voted as the Vice President, not for North Kingstown's chapter, but for the state. And then we have Travel and Tourism Team Decision Making, Valerie Auclair and Georgia Roy. Georgia came in first place last year too, but I wouldn't let her go to Atlanta because she was a, sophomore then? But she's now a junior, so she can go. So they work really hard. They do business planning, enterprise by international planning. They take exams. They also do role plays in front of judges, and many of them will be doing, they have like a business plan they have to present to the judges. So congratulations, they're on the way to Orlando, Florida.
Very exciting. Thank you so much. We will have you all come up. I'll come down and take a picture of you because I see some parents here, and so we'll have you come up with your teacher. So if you all want to come up, we'll just have you come up, and I'll come down and congratulate you, and then we'll take a picture.
Nice pen.
Okay, very exciting accomplishment, and we wish you all the best of luck in Orlando. Have fun and do great. And so next up on our presentations and recognitions, we'll let the DECA folks work their way out, but we are going to have Susan Erickson come up and talk about the academic decathlon team, so very exciting as well.
Thank you for providing the time to recognize this group. So this is my co-advisor and coach, Mr. Damon Lindsay, and together we have the pleasure of advising this club. It's a little different than DECA. You know, we kind of recruit kids to take a test. We say, look, you're going to sign up for about 8 months of studying, not 7 different academic areas, plus you have to prepare a speech, you have to be ready for an interview, and you have to write an essay. And each resource packet is about 100 pages long. And so, yeah, like that sounds like a lot of fun, doesn't it? And we get kids to do this, and they work so hard to get ready for this competition in early March. So the members that are here today are Annika Erickson, Fiona Chang, Sydney Howell, and Camden Smith. And in addition to Annika and Fiona, we also had Julia DiGenova, Aditya Dazarathi, Arthur Porto, and Morgan Martucci, who were part of our competition team, but they couldn't make it tonight. And as alternates, Lillian Borkman, Maggie Smith, Ryan Teagan, Alice Dunning also were alternates this year. So the alternates are important because they're actually preparing for next year's competition. It's kind of like your JV team. So they do all that same amount of work, and they can compete for medals. In fact, Sydney won a couple in her own right. But they don't really, you know, they're just there to learn. So it's kind of exciting that we have kids that are willing to do that too. I am just going to highlight a couple of the medal award winners that are here tonight. So Annika was our president for this year. She also has been a competitor on the team for 4 years. Last year and this year, she earned the gold medal in literature, which is a pretty high accomplishment. And also this year, she earned a gold medal for the essay and a bronze medal in economics. Fiona's been a competitor since her sophomore year, right? And the other thing we have to remember about these two is they competed in COVID, which means they did it like from their bedroom by themselves, online, all day, like that's that Sunday. So really, you got to give them a lot of credit for doing that. Fiona earned a gold medal in the interview this year. Camden is one of our newest members. He earned 4 medals this year in his competitive category. He earned a gold medal in art, a silver medal in music and in economics, and a silver medal in social science. And Sydney, her first year competing this year, came home with a couple of medals herself, a silver medal in economics and a bronze medal in music. So overall we competed, we placed 7th, and we're pretty excited about getting ready for next year. Thank you.
Same thing, Susan. Come up, have them come up, and we'll take a picture for y'all as well. Okay, and congratulations to the academic decathlon team. I can't even imagine the success you'll have next year, so good luck and thank you to your advisors. So that it brings us to our next agenda item, which is citizens' comments. So we will go in the order of folks that have signed up, and so the first person is Bill P. What do you think? Penoyer?
That's right. You have an A+ on pronouncing my name. Thank you.
Good job, good job.
I'm here on behalf of the North Kingstown Parades Committee. I'm revisiting my presentation last month and here again tonight. I have a written presentation for you. I would like to take a different tack, however, tonight to try to explain to you the passion that we have toward the notion of having cadence for the entire length of the North Kingstown Memorial Day Parade. Last Saturday, the American Legion was directly behind a marching band for the Providence St. Patrick's Day Parade. Behind us was the color guard of the Cranston Police Department. The Providence Parade runs all the way down Smith Street close to PC and goes all the way down to the State House. It took the band a little while to get warmed up, but once they had the cadence, it was a steady left beat, and that's what marchers need. As we approached the Elmhurst Tavern, it was evident to us that not only is it cadence, but it's a dance music. And this is really what we need for the final stretch of the parade. The music was marvelous. By the time we got to Patrick's Pub, I think we all felt as if we were in the reincarnations of James Brown. That's how exhilarating it was to us. And we could have gone, we went all the way to the State House. We could easily have marched up South Main Street and gone to the Providence Courthouse to visit all those memorials. But certainly cadence is important. I would argue that providing music may not be an academic subject, but it certainly is of high artistry. And we would greatly appreciate if attempts are made to open up the door of the curriculum of the high school to allow some students to provide cadence for us. North Kingstown is very proud of our police department and our fire department. And it would be a delight to hear the music that we experienced and to have them experience with the joy that we had was marching behind a fully colorful and well-spirited band. Thank you for your anticipation, and thank you for helping me.
Thank you. Next up is Will King.
My name is Will King. I was born here and grew up and graduated from North Kingstown High.
Sorry, Will, could you just give us your address as well? Thank you. Your address? Street address, please. Barbara, can you help me?
165 Saga Avenue, North Kingstown. I'm a brand new person on the Parades Committee, and the first thing I noticed was the mission of the Parades Committee, to promote North Kingstown. And so I don't think there's anybody that doesn't want more promotion. And our Memorial Day Parade is what we're promoting every year. We need a dozen drums to beat a marching cadence for the various groups that march with the Memorial Day Parade. Little kids that are three-footers that want to have their little uniforms on and they want to march, but we need drums for that. A half a dozen drums, 6 or 8 brass to play some marching music. That's all we're asking for. It's beyond me why the school system will not provide us with a Memorial Day marching unit. We don't need 60 or 80, the whole music department of the high school. But we do need a representative group to help with the town's Memorial Day Parade, which is honoring the lads that are North Kingstown lads that gave their lives for their country. That's what we're doing, is honoring that. This is pretty simple stuff. I don't understand why we can't get your group to advocate for us with the school system. That would be my request. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Lisa Garcia.
Lisa Garcia, 394 Westmoreland Lane, Saunderstown, Rhode Island. I am a math teacher and math department chair at the high school. In an effort to achieve some of the goals set by the School Employee Wellness Committee, Kathy Sapala, former interim assistant superintendent, recommended we utilize the school calendar to support the well-being needs of the North Kingstown School Department employees. Many employees have differing views on days off, so our recommendations are not based on personal choice, but based on the essentials of well-being. Employees and families need predictable, flexible schedules to have work-life balance. Planning for extended family gatherings is difficult with no continuity from one year to the next with our school calendar. One year we have the day off before Thanksgiving, the next we don't. Please consider creating a school committee policy that establishes some regularity of calendars moving forward. Well-being requires the human need for dignity. Scheduling PD at the end or beginning of a week is a respectful gesture that also allows for continuity of the instructional needs of our students. This underscores the importance of educators' work and the learning needs of our students. Scheduling the PD at the end or beginning of a week also gives families more flexibility when scheduling college visits, travel, and childcare. Kathy Sapala highly recommended the half-days be added into the schedule to address the issue of communication and connection in support of the educators that are required to complete the extended right to read training. While I am not required to complete that work, I would like to encourage the committee to please speak with administrators or teachers that do. The creation of the school calendar does not take into account the educator's professional insight. Quite often, the schedule is made without reflection of things that only a classroom teacher knows. The result impacts our students' education. Please consider the recommendations of the School Employee Wellness Committee when approving the calendar. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jordan Albernaz.
Jordan Albernaz, 109 Mount View Road, Narragansett. I sent you all an email earlier today, and I know it was timely, so you probably didn't read it. But I want to start by thanking each of you for your dedication to improving the school district, and your focus on mental health and well-being of our students, faculty, and staff has not gone unnoticed. It's truly refreshing. And secondly, I would like to share my concerns regarding the 2023-2024 draft calendar that's in the packet. I've noticed a couple of things that are a little concerning. So the first is that January 16th and March 5th have been allocated for Right to Read days. Like I said earlier this year, it takes away from teaching and learning time. This further impacts students and their learning loss at a time when we are trying to catch up not only from pandemic loss, but we're also trying to implement new high-quality curriculums at the high school and other schools. All of this while most, if not all, of the people who have to do the Right to Read have already completed their Right to Read. So those days are just taking away from the majority of us that don't have any more Right to Read to do. I highly suggest that this time be built into the 4 professional development days or after school time or whatever that we already have contractually negotiated. The second thing, and that's me as a person, not as a union member, as a union leader. That's me personally saying that. The second is the day before Thanksgiving, a day that we have had year after year off, is no longer off. And that day is often used for people to travel. So it increases the amount of time that students, parents, and faculty and staff get to spend with their friends and families. With a focus on wellness, it should be reconsidered how valuable this holiday and this time off is to everyone. The third final thing that I saw was Tuesday, April 23rd is listed as a PD day. And I'm thinking it's because it's a primary election day in the state, but I'm not really sure if that's the reason why. But it makes me wonder if students and families who are away for April break, which is the week before, will actually return to go to school on Monday, to then have Tuesday off, to then be back here on Wednesday. So I just think it's going to be wasted time anyway for us to have it. Why not extend break one extra day if you're going to keep that PD day on the 23rd? So I know that building a calendar is not easy and it takes a lot of consideration and work, but please consider these suggestions before accepting the draft calendar as is. And I would be more than happy to assist any of you in any possible way. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mia DeAndrea.
Hi, my name is Mia DeAndrea. Can I go?
Mia, just pull up the mic a little. And you can move if it's too hard to you can move that thing too if you need.
Sure. Hi, my name is Mia DeAndrea, and I'm a freshman at North Kingstown High School. I'm very disappointed to hear that the softball field renovation on campus was not posted on the agenda for tonight's meeting, especially because it was voted to table for this month's meeting. I do hope it will be on next month's agenda, as I'm sure it will take some time to complete the entire process. I understand the committee has many important tasks to attend, so please do not dismiss this issue as unimportant. This is important to the softball community because Ryan Park is not properly prepared for tryouts and the start of our season, leaving us scrambling to find space and time at the last minute. Next, at the spring sports athletic meeting, Mr. Tober, our amazing athletic director, explained how exciting it is to play for your school in front of classmates, friends, and staff. It is too bad most will not attend a softball game due to the field being off campus. Coming from my heart, it was very upsetting to sit there at the spring sports meeting listening to Mr. Tober hype up the stadiums, gyms, concession stands with TVs in them, brand new scorers table, and all the fans coming to watch those sports. This softball team is just as important as any other sport, and we deserve a state-of-the-art facility like the rest of the sports here at NK. To add on to that, it would be convenient for spring athletes to support each other in different sports because after one practice is done, we can stay and watch another sport play a game. Other reasons are that it would be beneficial to our sport to have as much access to our athletic trainer, Sean. Lastly, this is important because we will be able to stay after school to get academic support from a teacher or at the art program, and after that, being able to walk out of school and start playing or practicing and not having to worry about transportation to Ryan Park. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Hannah. You can go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Hannah McHale, and I'm a senior at North Kingstown High School. I've been playing softball for 12 years now, and I would like to take a few minutes to talk about the importance of having a dedicated softball field for our high school team. As some of you may know, we currently practice and play our home games at Ryan Park, which poses a number of challenges for our team. Not only is it a safety hazard with the men's league leaving stoppers in the field, but the field is also too big and causes one bad hop on a routine ground ball to turn into an in-the-park home run. This can negatively impact our statistics and make some players potentially appear worse to college coaches who are watching on. Furthermore, our team plays at Ryan Park more often than any other team in our league, increasing the likelihood of plays going wrong due to the field size, leading to more in-the-park home runs against us. This could cause us to lose more games and make us appear as a worse team. As a senior, I will be leaving the team next year, but I still care about my teammates, including my sister, who is a freshman and also plays softball. It is not right to them or any other talented softball player in Rhode Island to have to play on a field that puts them at a disadvantage. Moreover, Ryan Park does not only put players at a disadvantage, but it also puts our players in danger. The fact that we also invite other girls from different schools to come play on an unsafe field is unreasonable. We had an instance last year where one of our players was injured by the men's league base stoppers. Although it ended up being a relatively minor injury, it could have been much worse. To make matters worse, our school's personal athletic trainer, Sean, had to take time to drive to the field and assist the player. If we had a field on campus, we could have avoided this delay for the safety of our players. The boys' baseball team has a playable field on campus and an even nicer field off campus. In contrast, our softball team does not even have one safe field to play on. Additionally, there are other teams in our school, such as the swim team and the golf team, that have their own dedicated facilities where they can practice and play in a safe environment. It is time for the North Kingstown High School Department to provide the same for the softball team. With only 3 seniors on the team, transportation to practices and games will also be an issue. All 3 of us are only able to drive one person outside of our family at a time, leaving the rest of the team to find rides to practice. A dedicated softball field on campus would not only be easier for transportation, but it would also benefit our team's overall performance and safety. I urge the school to consider the importance of the softball field for our team, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And next up is Lauren Brothers. You're going to have to wait a second, Lauren.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Brothers, and I live at 20 Deck Street, Jamestown, Rhode Island. I'm a science teacher at North Kingstown High School and the parent of 2 future graduates. I'm speaking tonight to address the proposed school calendar for next year. On March 4th, the District Employee Wellness Committee sent an email to 3 central administrators that included recommendations regarding the school calendar that would promote employee and student wellness. Kathy Sapala encouraged us to address the calendar with administration, and we are grateful for the support she showed us when she was here. However, I was disappointed to see that our email to administrators was not responded to and none of our recommendations were included in next year's calendar. I hope that the school committee will consider our recommendations tonight. The first recommendation involves adding 4 half-days to the calendar. Many districts utilize half-days where students are released a few hours early so that teachers can participate in valuable PD time without adding days to the school year. Of the 20 districts I researched, including the RIDE calendar, 14 of them included half-days for this school year, averaging 4.6 half-days per year. Communication continues to be an area in need of improvement, and having more opportunities to discuss school and district current events and goals is necessary. I've spoken to several district employees about their feelings of isolation, especially employees with specialty positions, such as nurses and psychologists. Half-days could allow people in those positions to get together, share ideas, and feel more included in the North Kingstown school community. This would also provide opportunities for the new central administrators to build much-needed, positive, professional relationships with district employees. Half-days are a source of excitement for students and can also provide them some time for rest or make-up work. It's worth a try. The second recommendation I want to address involves having district PD days on Mondays or Fridays. There are currently 3 PD days scheduled for Tuesdays next year, though the January PD day follows a Monday holiday. Monday or Friday PD days allow students and their families to rest, travel, and participate in activities that may not be possible with only 2 days off. If parents need to take off work to be with their children on PD days, I am sure they would rather take off a Monday or Friday instead of a Tuesday. Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday PD days are disruptive of the school week, and some students become more thrown off than others, which negatively impacts teaching and learning. Of the many students I spoke to about this, they all preferred Monday or Friday PD days over other days.
15 seconds.
Also, teachers of the high school were told that PD days have not been scheduled for Mondays or Fridays because they're worried about attendance. Communication and respect from administration could go a long way in encouraging that attendance. Thank you for your consideration.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, which is the superintendent report.
Thank you. I have from Mr. Tober the NK Winter Athletic Accomplishments, which I'd like to read to you. The girls basketball advanced to the state Final Four and ultimately the state championship game. However, they lost to St. Mary's Bayview Academy in overtime, 42-40. The girls co-op hockey with South Kingstown and Narragansett advanced to the state Frozen Four and lost to LaSalle in the state semifinals in overtime, 3-2. Girls track and field. Cam Salid was honored with the second team all-division and first team all-class in the 55-meter hurdles. And Rachel Mara placed third all-class in the 1500-meter. Boys and girls swim. Zach Sabo, first team all-state. Isabel Bozard, Claire Carroll, Tessa Lafreniere, Sophia Simas, second team All-State in the 200-meter free relay. Zach Sabo, 500 freestyle, placed on the second team All-Division team and also placed on the 100 backstroke first team. Claire Carroll, 200-meter, second team, and also 200 free relay, and placed second team all division. Audrey Bonard, 100 breaststroke, came in second in all division. Isabel Bozard came in second team all division, 200-meter free relay. Tess Lafreniere, 200 free relay, second team all division. Sophia Simas, 200 free relay, second team all division. And this year the Rhode Island Interscholastic State Championship met and had a 200 freestyle unified relay. North Kingstown in the 200 freestyle unified relay team placed first. Swimmers were Josie Wagner, Sawyer O'Brien, Sam Rudman, and Henry Floria. Boys track and field. Sam Northrop, second team all-class 55-meter hurdles. James Borkman, second team all-class 55-meter dash. Jason Borg, third team all-class 1500-meter. And Ethan Wardell, second team all-class the weight throw. Competitive cheerleading, finished third in the state championships. In wrestling, Connor Swam, second place state championship. Second place, New England's. Tyler Shatner, fourth place in the States. Kaz Morosetti, fifth place in the States. And Caden Hughes placed fifth in the States. So congratulations to all these students and their accomplishments. That concludes my report.
Thank you so much, and congratulations to all the students and the coaches that support them. The next is routine items, and so item A is sealing the executive minutes and disclosing that there were no votes taken in today's executive session. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Okay, motion from Mr. Bridie, seconded by Mr. Case. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. And then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone want to exempt anything from the consent agenda?
C1 for me.
Okay, C1. Anything else? No? Okay. And so can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda with C1 taken out? Okay, moved by Ms. Lima. Do we have a second? Second from Mr. Bridie. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye. Okay, any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. And then we'll go back to C1.
I'm just going to abstain from that vote since I was not present.
Okay, so can we get a motion to approve the minutes from the March 7th budget workshop? Okay, moved by Ms. Lima. Do we have a second? Second from Mr. Bridie. Any discussion? Do you want to just say it in discussion? Or doesn't it actually matter? Yeah. Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye. Okay, aye, okay. And then one abstention. Perfect. Those are approved. So then we'll move on to D, approval of bid awards. I don't believe we have anything there today. Okay, and then we'll move on. No personnel items either. Those are all part of consent, excuse me. And so then we'll move on to unfinished business. And the first item under unfinished business is an update on the 2022-2023 school budget.
Thank you. At a previous meeting, you had asked us to research funding sources for the girls' softball team, to upgrade the girls' softball team. We did review and analyze our FY23 budget. We can safely say that we do have some savings due to many vacancies within the district to address the girls' softball field. I would recommend to the committee that you approve from the FY23 budget an amount not to exceed $100,000 to upgrade and review the girls' softball field.
So I'd like to make a motion that we support the superintendent's recommendation to allocate $100,000 from the 2023 budget to upgrade and revitalize the girls' softball field to make it game ready for spring 2024.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. So motion from Ms. Hoskins and a second from Mr. Case. We'll open it up for discussion. Anything, you get to start, Ms. Hoskins, if you want.
I just want to say I'm really proud of these girls. They have shown up together as a team, united, and have really fought for what they want and what they need and what they deserve. So, and I thank the administration for finding the money.
Okay, other discussion?
I believe it was, I don't know if Mike mentioned this last time, has there been research into the area? I know there was a question about some of the, it was in the leaching fields of the high school or something. Has that been looked into?
So perfect. That's actually my segue.
Okay.
So I had my hand up for when you all were done.
Okay.
So if approved this evening, my first step would be to engage with our engineer, architect and engineer, to see if this is a project that's within his scope. If it is, I would ask him for his fee for this. If the fee, again, pending approval, if his fee is within our purchasing guidelines, I would move forward to get a design that we would send out to bid. He would do that research at that time. If his fee is outside of our purchasing guidelines, that approval would come back here for your approval. Once approved there, he would put together exactly what needs to be done with the field. He would bid that project out, or they would bid that project out. They would review the responses. We'd probably bring it back through the building committee. The building committee would make their recommendation on which one to move forward with, and then this would ultimately end up here for your approval to approve the dollar amount.
You lost me. Okay. So I understand the process, but just curious about where the motion that's on the floor and what you just said kind of coincide. Because although I'm very supportive of us looking into this, and I also have some other questions about what we can do short term, because I do have concerns right now for the players. I'm curious about where the motion that's on the floor and what you just said, where that would coincide, because I want to make sure that we're voting on the correct information.
So if the architect looked at it and said, this is not a $100,000 project because of the leaching field, it's a $250,000 project, that right there, I would say, do not go any further. I need to bring it back here. That's all that would do.
Okay, understood. Other discussion?
So I have a question, and I just want to be clear up front. I support having the girls softball field having a safe place to play. So my question is, for the $100,000 that we're talking about here, what specifically does that cover?
So our number one goal would be to get that field play ready for next year, and that's going to consist of an infield that is at the proper pitch. I guess would be there's a height difference between center field and the home plate area. So it would be bringing the field up to be safe and ready. It would also help us determine, do we need to look at permanent temporary fencing, meaning a good quality fence to put around the field but would not penetrate the ground so they could be removed so as not to damage the septic field. Or would we have the option to potentially put in a more traditional fence? We would also need to make sure that and I do not believe this would come into play, that any outfield area would impede upon the other baseball field that's out there. Again, I don't think that comes into play. Mr. Tober looked at that, and there was no concern, even without fences, of two players colliding if you happen to have a simultaneous hit to center field, let's say.
Okay, so that just covers the field and the fence. What about the other things that go along with a softball field?
Those would so there is a backstop already in place. There is already a fenced off bench area. It's not a dugout because it's not dug down. So those things are in place, but this would just be the amount of money would be just to get the field game ready for next year. We could certainly look at adding additional features down the line, but this would just...
Do you anticipate additional costs coming out of our operating budget for that?
I don't know what those additional costs would include, so I wouldn't know where to place them at this time.
It's same. I think the boosters have talked about giving some money for things and being able to support the girls softball team.
I guess that would be my next question is can we get an idea of I don't want to allocate the $100,000 and then find out that the whole thing is going to be without an idea of what the total cost of the project is.
But I think they can play on it game ready with just benches. If they had to forego a dugout because we didn't have the funding for it, the girls would forego a dugout.
I think I would, the whole point I would imagine would be to have a playable field, right? I guess I'm just saying, is that where it's going to end, is just with throwing some benches? Again, I support this. I don't think it's prudent to spend $100,000 without having an idea of what the full scope of the project is. So that would be my other question. And I guess my last question is does that field there, does that displace any of the other teams that are currently playing there now?
It would not at this time. That is something that we have to look at our practice facilities on a larger scale. I would not support doing any type of permanent fencing unless we have a full plan for the fallout of what permanent fencing would do.
Another question I had, because we're in the conversation is regarding how we utilize the FY, where are we, 23 budget, correct? And the spending. And so have we gotten any documentation on the total vacancy funds? I know you all looked and determined that you do have this money to allocate from that, but is there additional, do we know kind of where we are financially for that piece of it? Because I don't feel like I've seen that information. And so, again, I support this, but I want to make sure we're utilizing it from the correct funds, that there isn't possibilities or options from the fund balance or other things that we're making sure that we're using it in the correct way instead of just pulling it out of this fiscal budget.
Yeah, we don't have an exact number at this point. The controller is still working on budget to actuals. This particular project would come from the savings in vacancies that we have occurred over the year.
Is there a possibility to, because I agree with Jen Lima about, like, I'm very curious about what the whole project is, because if we're going to do something, like, I want to make sure that we're strategically planning to do it correctly and right, and being able to provide information to the boosters and opportunities, et cetera. And so is there a world where we could go out and do an RFP to get the project scoped while also not delaying? Like, I know timeliness is really important as well, and so kind of doing things in conjunction.
I think the problem with that would be if you put an RFP out and you say a press box, a scoreboard, fencing down left field, right field, center field, improved dugouts, batting cage, the pitcher's warm-up area. Those are all the things. Am I
Your
missing
softball
anything?
knowledge is very impressive, Mr. Waterman. I'll just state that now.
Have I missed anything?
Mia will let you know for sure.
Okay. So I think if you bid a project like that, you will get some interest on it. And then if you start pulling back the layers, people will become it becomes right now we're looking at landscaping primarily. Yeah. That's more of a construction project. You're kind of talking two different scopes. Mm-hmm. What I would want to do is build a project that year on, year out, we could add and make improvements to that facility.
Okay. Other thoughts, consideration, conversations? Gabriel?
I think since the field would be for the softball team, I think it would be important to have their input, maybe speaking to them about if we only want to spend $100,000, what is most important to them to get out of that $100,000? For example, if they really want a fence but they don't want a dugout, or whatever it is that's important to them, I think speaking to the players and coaches.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Jen, did you have something? And then Jenny?
Have we looked into, because I think the important thing is a safe field for them, have we looked into, I mean, the boys varsity team does not play on site, they play off site. Have we looked into utilizing any of the fields at Ryan Park, working out something with the town to convert one of those fields there into a usable field for them?
Well, we've requested that they use the girls' field. They haven't in the past. They lose a lot of balls into the river right there. These girls want a field at the high school. To delay it because you're not sure how much, if they need a dugout or want a dugout later on or 3 years from now, they want a playable field. Up to $100,000 will give them a playable field for next season. To put it on the table once again when it was pulled off the
I wasn't
agenda.
advocating to pull it off the table. I was trying to see if we wanted to, like, coinciding, do other things. So like I said, I'm supportive of the motion. I was just trying to make sure that we have scope, because I also know that, what we heard at the last meeting was that the current field is not suitable, and then also that we have transportation issues. So I'm trying to do multiple things. So I'm not saying no to allocating the money. I wanted to make sure it's coming out of the right fund.
Take care of that first, and then we can have a discussion about other things.
Okay, other discussion?
If I may. Once we have the architect on board, they may be able to give me what's a press box, what's fencing
Mm-hmm.
for this. So once we have somebody on the project, there's nothing stopping me from, once we get that RFP for the I'll call it the landscaping, to fix the field, I can already have information on, they're going to know what the cost per linear foot for fencing is of a 4 foot, 6 foot, whatever size fence we would need or want. So we might be able to come back at that point because again, I'll be coming back to you asking you to approve X amount of dollars. I'm going to guess somewhere in the $50,000 to $75,000 range is just going to be fixing the turf, ripping out the infield, bringing in the proper mix and fill. I can also then at that, if you wanted to stay within that $100,000, based off of the work that they've done, we can put in a permanent outfield fence, or we can put in left field, right field fences for foul territories without impacting anybody else who uses that field. The other thing we have to factor in, I see Dr. Morse here, is physical education uses that area. So I can bring back to you options, but I think the top priority right now is fixing that infield.
Other discussion? We'll go with Mr. Bridie. He's unmuting, and then we'll go to you.
Mike, are you saying that we can get something done this year so that these girls know? All right.
Unfortunately, no.
Oh, I understand the season's already started. I saw them practicing the other night. But, so the earliest that this can happen would be next year?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
What we were able to do this year is we have Bus 14, which drives by Ryan Park. They have the capacity to take any girls from the high school who cannot get transportation over there. That bus goes right by Ryan Park. It'll drop the kids off for practice. We were able to do that, which was new for this year. So I'm happy. I hope that helps. I know it doesn't solve your need, but I hope it helps.
And as far as safety goes, if we can get rec to let them play on the women's fields and not the men's fields? The bus leaves right after school.
Yep, so we unfortunately can't do citizens' comments right now, but feel free to follow up with Mr. Waterman, right, and the athletic director if there's any challenges with the bus and the timing for it. Because definitely the goal is to help get the folks there, and if it's not working, please feel free to communicate that. And so going back to the discussion, I know, Tom?
I think my question's answered. I'm frustrated that we're not going to be able to do something this year, but I understand why. Ordinarily, when a group of people walk into this building with bats, I get a little bit nervous. But these are really great young women, and I'm really impressed to see a freshman standing up here and speaking. We've got to do whatever we can to make sure that this is a reality next year. So.
Mr. Case?
I will concur with the prior speaker, Mr. Briarty, with the comments he made. But so this 100,000 that we're allocating, and I don't know if this is a question for you or Mr. Waterman, just so we can be clear what we're voting on here. The 100,000 will go to an architect first. That piece will come out. Just say, I'm just throwing out a number. It's 50,000. So then you have 50,000 left. You can proceed up to that 100,000 level, and then anything over that, you'll come back to us.
Yes, and I think the architectural fees are much, much less than that.
Okay.
I would anticipate.
Okay, that's what. I guess that's what I was getting at. Thank you.
Can I ask a question about where the estimate came for $100,000 for this project?
It came from a quote that we received 2 years ago, which was just to do the infield, was $49,000, and that was 2 years ago. So it was the cost of inflation on that, as we've seen projects have gone up so significantly. But what that didn't address is the 18 to 24 inch variance between center field and home plate. So to factor that in, along with to give an allowance for some type of temporary fencing. That was we did some research online on what temporary fencing costs, how many feet, distance from the outfield, what a home run should be to center field, and then figure out how many linear feet you need.
Yeah. And why didn't the project proceed 2 years ago when we had that work?
That was the athletics department was getting information on what the cost would be. I do not have that information.
Other discussion on the motion? Sorry, can you speak into the mic?
I think after they got that, COVID hit.
Oh, okay, timing, understood.
The athletic director left, like everything kept tumbling.
Yep, okay, understood. Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed, any abstentions, motion carries. Any other items on the 2022-2023 school budget?
Thank you. Just an update on the 23-24 budget. We presented the FY24 budget, as you well know, to the town council last evening.
Frank, just wait 1 second for our delightful softball team to hustle out. No, it's okay. Have a nice night. I want to make sure we can hear Dr. Pilata. Okay, it sounds there. Go ahead, Frank.
So we presented the FY24 budget to the town council last evening. The town council was very cordial, and they asked us some very insightful questions, clarifying some line items. At this point, I believe the next public hearing is on April 19th, and we are awaiting a final vote for final appropriation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion on item A, which is the 2022-2023 budget, or 23-24? The one thing that I would say is, just making sure that we get now that we're kind of through that process with the town, and thank you so much for their conversation and discussion, just making sure that we get the budget information up public for transparency's sake for the folks, and so just making sure that we have the controller work on that so that we can get that information up, because I know that there has been a delay, so just making sure that we do that would be very important, so thank you for that in advance. Okay, moving on to the next item, which is CIP, existing bond, future bond. Anything there?
No updates.
Okay, thank you. And then item G is the equity audit piece.
I had a question.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, go ahead, Jen.
There had been some questions that I had sent on the information that had been sent out that I'm still waiting for answers on. I just wanted to get an update on those as soon as the administration can provide it, please.
Are you referring to something with the CIP or the existing bond or future bond?
The CIP.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And so Mr. Waterman's making a face. Do you want to explain what we're looking for?
Sorry, Mike. I sent it to Dr. Pilata. I will forward you.
Okay. Perfect. And we know there's a lot going on, so no worries. So we'll forward that over, and then hopefully can get some updates at our next meeting. And so the next item on the agenda is the equity audit PCG presentation. And so we had asked a representative from PCG, which is the group that did the equity audit, to come and present to the school committee very shortly thereafter when we received the equity audit. Unfortunately, due to a death in the family, that was not possible. And so we did still want to have someone speak to the group regarding the audit, and especially with some of the questions about the tables, et cetera. And so although delayed, we are very grateful that via Zoom, someone is going to come in from PCG and walk through some of the information in the audit for us. With that said, what we're going to do is we're going to bring the screen down. We'll go down and go that way, but the folks from PCG will also be recording the Zoom, and so if any folks are having trouble hearing it via the live stream, we will have a Zoom recording as well of the presentation that we'll post alongside the video that we'll be taking today. So we're going to try two different ways to capture this information, and so I'll ask the school committee to go down, and then we will connect to that meeting with PCG to hear more about the equity audit, and then the school committee will have an opportunity to ask any clarifying questions as needed, as well as the administration.
May I clarify one item?
Yes.
During the Zoom call, the stream is actually going to not be available. It's going to point at the piece of paper. We're going to have to pull the audio out, because otherwise, if you ever been in a room where multiple people are on a Zoom, you get that woo 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 sound. So what will happen is once we receive the recording, we'll be able to edit this live stream and embed it right in there. So for the folks watching at home, it's about to go quiet until the end of the call.
Is that true, Jess? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amanda Preston-Sakari. I am a senior consultant with Public Consulting Group, and I was one of the leads on the equity audit with you all over the course of the last school year. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everyone see the slides that are up there right now?
Yes.
Thumbs up, great. All right. So, just a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about this evening. Go into a little bit about the equity framework and how we approach this equity audit. I'm going to share from the full report the 4 priority recommendations that came out of that report, as well as some examples of related findings there. This is obviously not the full report. As you all know, the full report is very long. So it's just a quick snapshot of that. And then want to clarify some questions that we've received, and then, of course, open up to your questions as well. So starting with the equity audit framework, this we like to do just to make sure that we're all on the same page of what we're talking about. And so thinking about what is educational equity. So educational equity means ensuring each student receives what is necessary for their success, for successful academic, emotional, and social outcomes. Educational equity is making sure every student gets individualized resources, that all necessary supports are provided, and that academic rigor and supports to meet that rigor are provided. Where I think some we've heard some folks get frustrated is thinking about educational equity as removing necessary resources. That's not what that is, or lowering expectations for certain groups, or reducing academic rigor for certain students. So I want to make sure that we're really clear on that. So it's really looking at the needs of every individual student with a particular eye on those students who have historically marginalized identities, or who have historically been treated with low expectations for a variety of reasons. So related to that, what is an equity audit? So an equity audit is looking at the policies, the programs, the practices, the culture of an organization or an institution from an equity lens. And an analogy that I like to use is if the service, so at the schools, it would be, providing an education. For this analogy, if the service is providing shoes, equality means that everyone gets a pair of shoes, but equity means everyone gets a pair of shoes that fits them. And so an equity audit is figuring out who everyone is, what shoes are needed, what sizes everyone has, and how to figure that out. And as an important reminder, before I dive into some of the methodology and findings, is that this equity audit is meant to be a tool for you all to use moving forward. It's a snapshot of North Kingstown in this one point in time, and it is by no means exhaustive. And so it's really meant to be a supportive piece of work for you all to take and run with. And in this equity audit with North Kingstown, we had 6 focus areas, which are laid out in 6 individual chapters in the full report. Leadership policies and practices, professional development, culture and climate, discipline, student outcomes and access to advanced learning opportunities, and resource allocation. And aligned with those 6 focus areas, we had some kind of broad guiding questions. For those of you who participated in focus groups, interviews, the survey, we asked a lot more questions than this, but these were the kind of overarching questions, really figuring out within each of these focus areas, what does that look like from an equity lens in North Kingstown? What are the things that are going well? What are the things that are opportunities for growth or change to help make North Kingstown an even more equitable and welcoming and inclusive district? So our methodology, how we went about this study. We had a lot of data sources in this study. We had interviews. I know that I got to speak with several of you, as well as current and former colleagues. We had individual interviews with members of district leadership and school committee members. We held 8 community focus groups that were advertised by the district, and had spoke to 46 folks across those focus groups. And the surveys, we had at the very beginning of the equity audit, a survey called the Leadership Readiness Assessment, the Leadership Equity Readiness Assessment. And that was really meant for district leaders and school building leaders, just to kind of see where folks were at the beginning of this equity audit. And we received responses from almost everyone. The student survey was sent out to all middle and high school students, and we received over 380 responses. And then a community survey that went out to everyone. We got over 1,640 responses to that survey, which was an incredible response from the North Kingstown community. And then in addition, we collected and analyzed a lot of other data, both from the district, from publicly available sources, from RIDE, things like that. All of those are laid out in the full report. Two pieces that you'll see in the full report that I just wanted to touch on here. One was what we call our strategies analysis at a glance. And the idea is that at the beginning of each chapter, there's a table like this that's kind of a high level, where are we at a glance in this area? And so it's tied to evidence-based strategies and things that you'd want to see in an equitable district. And so it allows folks to take the report in chunks as necessary in chapters and get a snapshot of that focus area. And a few things to note here: any determinations there were made based on the data collected from the district, publicly available sources, and stakeholder engagement efforts. A yes means that it was fully observed or agreed upon. A partial means partially or inconsistently or not necessarily agreed on. And a no means that PCG did not observe this over the course of the audit. That does not mean that it is a definitive, no, this is definitely not happening or is not done in the district. It is a snapshot of, in the moment of this audit, the PCG team did not observe this in the data or documents collected. And the other piece, which you may be familiar with because the state does some of these risk ratio analyses as well. We use a risk ratio analysis when looking at discipline and IEP referral and assignment rates. And the reason why we do this is because, especially in districts similar to yours, where different populations of students can be very small, solely relying on a proportionality analysis, so solely saying, you know, of this many students, this many received a discipline referral, because that can be skewed by, you know, the addition or subtraction of one student or one disciplinary referral because of the small population. However, a risk ratio analysis allows us to see a more true picture of that disproportionality, because what it's saying is, what is the risk as a single student? What is the risk of you receiving a disciplinary referral compared to anyone else in your school? And so using these calculations, we feel like paints a more accurate picture of either disproportionality or proportionality in these situations. And you'll see a few examples of these shortly. So, priority recommendations and examples of related findings. And again, all of this is in the full report in a lot more detail, but wanted to share this as a starting place for our conversation tonight. So there were 4 priority recommendations from the equity audit. Number 1 is to set a clear vision and common language for equity across North Kingstown. Number 2 is to develop a district-wide equity policy. Number 3 is to prioritize equity-focused professional development. And number 4 is to review and revise discipline practices and policies from an equity lens. What you'll see here is a few examples of findings from the report that informed this recommendation. So what you see here is some of the qualitative analysis that was done around the vision of equity and the common language of equity in the district. And so these are just some of the examples of how we came to the conclusion that this was an area that needed to be focused on. Similarly here, this has some examples of both qualitative and quantitative findings from the report. These are not exhaustive findings related to this, to any of these recommendations. It's just examples to show kind of how we piece this together. So as a team, we wrote the findings first. And so then as we're looking through them and seeing common findings and things that seem to come to and rise to the surface, that's where the recommendations are developed from. Around professional development, same thing. We analyze professional development documents, policies, records, as well as the Leadership Equity Readiness Survey and the other open survey responses and focus group responses. And so this was one of the priority areas. There's not been any equity focused PD since 2019. And many folks across the district want it and express a need for it. And so that was something that we thought needed to be elevated. And finally, the discipline practices and policies. There were examples kind of anecdotally shared in focus groups, but then survey responses also backed up some of these findings, as well as an analysis of bullying policies. And then what also related to this recommendation were some of those risk ratios that I just talked about. So for example, these are disciplinary referrals district-wide. This data was provided by the district. And so what you can see here is all across the district, African-American or Black students were 2.52 times more likely to receive a discipline referral than any other student in the district. Hispanic or Latino students, 1.92 times as likely, and folks of 2 or more races, 1.61 times as likely. And what you see below is that students who are eligible for the free and reduced price lunch program are 3.25 times as likely as all other students to have received at least one disciplinary referral in the district. And this note is included here on this slide. It's also included in the report. There are subgroups that were not reported due to small numbers. So one of the questions that we've received is why Asian students were not included in this analysis, because there's the same number, approximately the same number of Asian students as African American or Black students in the district. However, we did not include them because there were fewer than 10 Asian students who had received a disciplinary referral. And similar with American Indian or Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander students. And we do not report for student confidentiality reasons. We do not report student groups where either the all students number or the students with disciplinary referrals is less than 10. We then took a look beyond just disciplinary referrals and looked at suspension rates at the middle and high school levels. And what you see here is at the middle and high school levels, Black students were 7.19 times more likely to receive a suspension than any other student. Students of 2 or more races were 8.43 times as likely to receive a suspension than any other student. And those students who are eligible for the free and reduced price lunch program were 6.74 times as likely as all of their students. These are just a few examples of the risk ratios that are included in the full report. There are more broken down by gender and some other categories. And again, you'll see in the note here, Asian, American Indian or Alaskan Native, and Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander students are not included in this analysis because there were fewer than 10 students with suspensions documented in the data. And just before we open it up for some other questions, just wanted to make a note that included in the full report are deeper dives into each of those focus areas, including research-based best practices, the strategies analysis at a glance tables, key findings in each chapter, and a total of 34 recommendations throughout the report. And there are additional analyses and data visualizations looking at RICAS outcomes and risk ratios around IEP assignments. So there's, as you are aware of, a lot more in the full report than was here. And a couple things that I wanted to clarify before opening up for questions based on questions that we've received. One was around why were revisions made to the original version of the final equity audit report. PCG made a data sourcing error in analyzing the graduation rates for North Kingstown and pulled the graduation data for the state of Rhode Island instead of for the district. The team corrected that error and reviewed all the other data sources and tables before resubmitting the revised report to ensure that they were all accurate and pulling the correct data. In addition, the RIDE Data Center website updated on January 30th, 2023, which was the day before we submitted the original report, which resulted in almost all of our links being broken in our citations. And so we also revised the report to go through and make sure that those links were not broken and led to the correct data sources there. And then the other question that we've received is around feeling like some of the recommendations provided are similar to recommendations provided to other school districts. And I just wanted to clarify that we develop all recommendations from research-based best practices and our team members' areas of expertise. And that means that depending on the focus area of the study, those recommendations will be aligned. For example, if two districts both lack clarity around an equity vision, they'll both have a recommendation to prioritize the development of statements and communications around equity, because this is a foundational strategy for increasing awareness of and buy-in for equity work. And so while our recommendations are grounded in the same best practices as all of our equity work, they are tailored to North Kingston's context and priorities, and had those discussions with the team working on this report and thinking about how to prioritize and frame some of those recommendations to make them the most useful to you all.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Amanda. So I'll open it up to questions from the committee.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you for coming in and answering those questions. I don't specifically have any questions because I've asked you that you tell them that I have this process. I just wanted to thank you for clarifying. And I just wondered if briefly you could touch on what you feel would be the one thing to let people know in the district who might be hesitant about the audit or the results of the audit. What would be the one thing that you would say to anybody who might have questions about it?
Sure. I think that I heard that correctly. What would I recommend saying to folks who may have questions about the audit?
Yes, please.
Okay, great, thanks. I think that one of the things that I find really important, which I put in those first few slides as I was talking, and I can share these slides with you all as well, is that this equity audit never was designed as a kind of comprehensive longitudinal research study. It was meant to come in, we were meant to come in, study this snapshot, build this snapshot of where North Kingstown is in this moment. And that involves perceptions, that involves a lot of anecdotal and qualitative data, as well as the quantitative analysis. We were not tasked with analyzing things like trends over time and other kind of layers of statistical analysis. That being said, the data that we did use and develop is all solid, and we think it's a really useful place to jump off of. In that the idea behind this equity audit was not to say this is the definitive statement of everything going on around equity in North Kingstown. Instead, this equity audit was meant to come and hear so many voices. The fact that we got, almost 1,400 people responding to our surveys, we heard a lot of voices, and we were able to capture a lot of those stories in this report. And individual stories are the foundation of equity, especially in schools, in communities like North Kingstown, where different populations may have smaller numbers and may not be as vocal or visible to everyone. And so we hope that this report is able to provide a bit more insight into the experiences of folks that may not be seen or heard from as frequently or as often in the community and in the schools. And so I think that taking this equity audit study for what it is, which is a snapshot and a tool to help you all move forward, I think is the way that it can have a really great impact.
evening, Amanda. My name is Tom Brady. We have met. Thank you very much for your presentation. I want to touch on a subject that kind of plays off what Ms. Lima was just talking about. This audit has not been without some controversy in this community. There are a number of people that are uncomfortable with it. One attack that I've seen repeatedly is that they're going to appoint an equity director or officer. I'm not sure what title it would be, and that person is essentially going to be like a police officer or somebody who is here to investigate and root out alleged bad behavior. I'm not sure that's how I see it, but I'm curious, what would you feel would be an appropriate description for a person who is designated to pursue that role as an equity director, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that one of the things that we recommend with hiring a director of DEI, a director of equity, however you all end up naming it, is that this work needs to be intentional. And the work of shifting some mindsets, the work of ensuring that changing some of the ways that things have always been done is hard. And if there is not someone who is dedicated to and focused on that work, it is something, I know I spent 10 years in a school district. I know that it is easy to let that slip to the back burner because there's a fire every day when you're running a school district. And so having a director of DEI, someone whose sole role is focused on moving this work forward, on supporting the leadership in setting goals around equity work, and supporting you all in understanding the direction and thinking through what policies could look like, can be an incredible asset. It's not about policing folks or ensuring that folks are appropriately punished for perceived actions. It's really about making sure that you all don't lose momentum. This work is so important, and the equity audit is an amazing first step to really take a look. And I know that you all have gone through a ton of change over the last year, to say the least. And you are having an opportunity to figure out what North Kingstown School District is going to look like in the future. And this is an opportunity to make sure that it looks like a place that welcomes everyone, that all students feel safe, and that all students feel welcome. And having someone in that role who can spend their time and capacity, which is such a valuable resource in education, on this work, ensures that focus doesn't fade away. That would be kind of our recommendation there.
Just to try to summarize, if I can, do you view this role of a person who is in charge of equity within this school system or this school department as being more of an educative role rather than an inquisitorial or investigative role?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely see that role as being someone who can support with professional learning, really helping folks understand the equity work, as well as someone who can help leaders set goals and make strategic actions towards those goals. I do not at all see a DEI director as being someone who just investigates issues or punishments or things like that. I think that one of our priority recommendations is that the discipline policies and practices are revisited because there is disproportionality there. I don't think that is the role of the DEI director. I think that equity just needs to be built into the folks who are controlling the discipline processes anyway. So the leaders of the district who are writing these policies, who are enforcing these policies, who are training folks on these policies, and just having the DEI director be a resource to those folks to make sure that hey, I'm not sure how to approach this from an equity lens. I don't really know what an equity lens is. What might that look like? The DEI director is someone who could provide that support. I don't see the DEI director as someone kind of interrogating or investigating folks.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Katie? Oh, sure.
Hi, Amanda, Frank Pilata. On one of the slides, you indicated that recruiting and hiring should be through an equity lens. How does qualifications intersect with that?
I'm sorry, I missed. What should be through an equity lens?
You mentioned in one of your slides that recruiting and hiring should be through an equity lens. How does qualifications intersect with that statement?
Yeah, I think that that is a natural tension that folks have, especially when we're talking about teacher work and school leader workforce diversity, because we know that that's a struggle nationwide around the pipeline of multilingual, multiracial, and other diverse educators is lacking. And so thinking about it from an equity lens means that you're taking a look at the interview questions you're using. You're taking a look at the rubrics that you're using. You're taking a look at the process that you're using for looking at resumes, and you're making sure, am I looking for essential qualifications and qualities, or am I looking at this from my own kind of internal bias lens? Because we all have that lens. We all, it is a known fact, it's called a like bias, where folks are more likely to hire people who relate to them in either in a physical way in their background. We all do it. And so you have to be really intentional about not doing that if you're going to hire from an equity lens. So going through, and again, this could be a place where a DEI director can really help with figuring out those tools, because it's not saying what some folks perceive to be, getting rid of, lowering standards just to ensure diversity. It's about making sure that you're not inadvertently cutting off opportunities for diversity because of unknowingly looking for things that are like you or your background, or what you perceive as being quality. And so really taking a look at other tools that are out there for assessing, especially there are a lot of tools out there right now for assessing teacher candidates that take into account teacher quality while making sure that you're not accidentally prioritizing alike and sameness.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for zooming in. I feel like we were successful with it. So thank you.
Yes, this is great. Thank you all so much. And I will send the recording over right now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So thank you so much for PCG's presentation. And as we mentioned, for those of you who are watching at home, we did record the Zoom, and so we'll be posting that as soon as possible so folks are able to view it. And so we're still in this item, though, and so Dr. Pilata, I don't know as far as accepting an official presentation, if we want to do that, or wait, or accept the official report, if we want to wait maybe to the next agenda to do that. That would be the last piece, but we did want PCG to be able to come and present to the group. And again, there was a delay due to an unfortunate passing in the researcher's family. So we appreciate them being able to come today, and then we'll have that on the agenda item for next. Any other discussion on this agenda item? Great. And just one thing to clarify, during the budget conversations, we did talk about earmarking money for a potential position, et cetera. The way that the budget process works, that timing and those conversations had to happen then, but no official action's been taken. The administration is just looking at the ESSER money, et cetera, and so wanted to be very clear on kind of the timeline and the order of operations. It's okay, Jenny, we all have to eat food. And so just wanted to make sure that we were clear on that, is that we were just having those conversations about where that funding funding was, and there was a decision made not to put it in the FY24 operating budget. So that was the only decision that's fully been made and authorized, other than asking the administration to look at the ESSER funds and possibilities of funding this position through that at this point. So the next item on the agenda is the NSDEC superintendent search. And so at our last conversation, we wanted to look and have further conversations regarding the interview process and the superintendent search process. And so we had left it that I was going to look and provide some information and resources regarding how the state of Massachusetts does it, as they have a kind of standardized process, and also reach out to some folks. And then there also were some attachments in the packet as well. And so can I get a motion for discussion of the NSDEC superintendent search? Okay, move from Ms. Hoskins, seconds from Mr. Chase. And so we'll open it up for discussion. So in the packet, you will see the timeline there as well, and then also some information regarding what MASC, I don't know how they say their abbreviation, but the Massachusetts School Superintendent Group kind of recommends their search processes to go. And so definitely feel free to open that up and ask any questions or discussion. Our goal is, I think, to kind of give a sense to the NSDEC group of kind of where we'll be proceeding, as applicants may have questions about the process, et cetera.
I'm sorry, I'm just getting it up.
Yeah, no worries. Take a
Did
second.
anything change in the calendar? Because I know that the town council had issues because 2 of the dates fell on Mondays where they had meetings.
Yeah, great question. So let's open that up. And again, the main contact for the administration is the Human Resources Director, and so a lot of correspondence has gone there. And so let's see if there were any changes to that. If not, we can definitely make sure that Ms. Russo follows back up with them. So Mr. Case is faster than me, so what do you have, Rob?
Yeah, March 27th, first interview. Is there? March 27th is Monday. Yep.
So I think it's really important that our town manager and town council are part of the process. And I know they sent out emails stating that there were 2 Monday dates that obviously wouldn't work for them at the time that it was scheduled.
Okay, so Frank, could you follow up with Stephanie on that and have her check in, if you don't mind? So just the town council meets on Mondays, and so I guess some of the dates are on Mondays, so seeing if they want to adjust those at all.
I know they did send an email.
Yep, perfect. Any other questions, conversation regarding, kind of how we as a school committee want to proceed as far as the screening committee, and then what will happen after the screening committee? If you look in the attachments, you'll see that we did attach kind of the 5-phase process that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees recommends, and theirs is standardized. And so I think the part that we were really looking at and talking about is how we want to proceed as a committee, especially towards the end. And so I think we're pretty standard as far as, the screening committee and what will happen during those meetings, et cetera, and the recommendations that will come forward from that. But the kind of question is, how do we want to proceed from there? And through previous conversations, we really kind of talked through that I think we have some consensus that we don't want to have what we did last time, which was the candidates on this stage at a meeting being interviewed at that point, but also transparency and community conversation involvement is important to us as well. And so trying to figure out that balance. And so from what I was able to do with research in looking into this process, it looks like in that phase 4 stage, what they do is at that point where the screening committee has recommended some finalists, depending on their pool, to the committee, they then at that point conduct reference checks on the finalists. And I think that that's an important piece of it, because a lot of the conversation that I've heard is that, folks might not want to tell their previous employers, different folks, et cetera. And so once we're kind of at this point, I do believe that checking references before going forward with the community is a really important piece. And so that was something that stood out to me as a potential good practice to put into our process, is checking references at that point before we have folks come and meet the whole community if we do decide to go that direction. that also then at that point kind of alerts the finalists that they are at that point where they will be reaching out to folks, perhaps their current employers, and so there might be time for a conversation there. And then it went on to talk about perhaps site visits. I know when we were looking into different options, et cetera, that is something that, you know, making sure that we're remembering that we're recruiting a superintendent to this district as well, and so showing them some of examples of the buildings, examples of the middle school, elementary school, and high school perhaps. And then also having them maybe meet with some key groups for the final interviews. I was looking into some different models, and some folks had them interview with different groups of kind of constituents. Others had them just interview in executive session with the school committee, but definitely once kind of folks are out there and their references are getting checked and they're doing site visits, obviously there'd be some transparency. Other groups in different states were looking at other options too of having the community members be able to provide some information and some feedback that did get to meet with the candidates, and also having students meet with the superintendent candidates as well. I did reach out to South Kingstown. I was not able to connect with East Greenwich, but South Kingstown actually did a very similar process to what we had done last time, and so they did do, as Dr. Pilata, they confirmed that they did do the interviews in public, that final interview process. So I know that that was something of the committee's interest, is kind of seeing what folks did near us. And so they did do that very public interview process at the very end of their process, and obviously were successful in getting a candidate. So that was some of the research that I was able to put together. There's no perfect like roadmap for this one. I was hoping to find a really good best practice or a really good grounded kind of reference for us. And it's kind of really subjective, I think, on what our goals are and also what we're trying to achieve in attracting a candidate. And so I don't have a formal recommendation, but kind of presenting this to you all for discussion and questions. And then if we do get to a place where we feel like we have some consensus, we can make a motion. So thoughts, questions, et cetera?
So, Rob, you came from Massachusetts. Like, it was just accepted there, right? That was how it was done?
Yes, as far as, you know, all of the superintendent searches I've seen and heard in Massachusetts, they just did one in Newton where they just appointed a new superintendent in the last week or so. And it was, the final three were made public and made aware. I think sometimes that results in their school committees and their administration coming forward saying, wait, don't leave, we want to, and so then you have somebody withdraw, and so it's some kind of, there's pros and cons to it, I think, though.
Right.
I think, you know, in a state like Rhode Island where it's much smaller, and it's very small, and a lot of times you do have superintendents moving to different school districts, you know, for various reasons. I can see the benefit of maybe not doing it so open. Yeah. But I also see the pro of it, of giving the public a chance to hear them and see them before a final decision is made. So, you know.
Other thoughts, questions, considerations? Dr. Pilata, someone who's gone through it many times, any advice?
You did mention the process in South Kingstown. I was part of that process, and it was a very intense process, but the vendor, who was not NASDAQ at the time, the three candidates that were selected did have a public interview with the school committee. The questions were prepared by the vendor or the consultant, and each candidate had X amount of minutes to respond to the questions. And then the school committee reconvened in executive session to discuss the candidates, and they made a decision. And then they came back out to the public at a later date and made the announcement.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Other questions, comments, thoughts?
It seems to me that one of the problems that I noticed when we watched this play out late last year was that it occurred in this room, which is just not an ideal forum for interviewing a candidate for a job. If we were able to do it at the school administration building, that might be a much better location I realize that we have to balance this, that there will be people who will feel that private interviews will indicate a lack of transparency. I don't really think that's what anybody is seeking. But I think it's really important that we protect the dignity of any candidate that makes the effort to apply for a position here, particularly if we want to attract good candidates. So I don't know how this is going to play out, but if we're going to split the proverbial baby, a smaller room that is a little bit more inviting and comfortable for everybody involved, I think would make a lot of sense.
Okay, thank you. Other thoughts? Jenny?
I think that's a really good point, although I have to admit there are pros and cons to both, and that the biggest con that I heard was people didn't apply for the job because it was a public interview. And
So
they did not apply because it was a public interview.
Right.
And they didn't want their current district to know, they did different reasons. So I don't want to limit the pool of quality applicants based on public interview or not.
Okay, valid. Other thoughts, considerations? Something that I'm thinking about too is, we've been hearing a lot about teacher voice and making sure, that we're listening to the folks that are doing the work in the day-to-day. And I think as much as we want to make sure we bring in a qualified superintendent, I also think that we need a leader that is accepted by the people that they're leading. And so I think that's a big piece of it, is making sure that we have buy-in from the community, especially the internal school committee, the building leaders and different things, so that we're not bringing in someone who might then, not have that buy-in due to a non-transparent process. And so, I think this decision in different years and different things may go differently, but that's definitely something that I'm concerned about, is bringing someone in that's going to be able to be really successful very quickly, because we know we've had so much turmoil and et cetera. So I'm not advocating for either side, but as I'm thinking through what we should do in my head, that's something that I keep kind of coming back to, is making sure that people feel like they had a voice in the process, especially those who are going to work for this person.
I would completely agree with that, but I would also add to that we do have such a great representation on the search committee that maybe there's a way to have more of input into those folks so they can bring that input into the interview process at the search committee level.
Yep, so on the screening committee, we have a pretty good representation, is what you're saying. Sure. Other thoughts or considerations?
When do we have to make a decision by?
So the applicant pool is open until today. So today is March 21st. And so I can imagine that kind of moving forward as they're going to have conversations with folks, that's when those conversations and questions about where the process is. And so we'll have the applicant pool, they'll have kind of that information. And then so we would like to give some guidance, I think, if possible, to the screening committee today. If you all don't feel like you have enough information to give any sense of it, we might be able to give them some kind of way of that we're leaning to give them some talking points with folks. So it's definitely not at the application stage, but at the will people withdraw that have applied kind of stage, depending on what those questions are that they might have with the screening committee.
When's the first screening committee meeting?
So you have the calendar in your
but we're hoping
packet.
to change it.
Okay.
I don't know if it can be changed, or we're looking at making sure that the town manager and town council member that are on the search committee.
So if we made a decision by our next meeting on the 4th, would that work?
So it would definitely work for the process. It just might, I'm not sure exactly what kind of conversations, if any, NSDEC will have with candidates before the screening committee. And so, and this is all fairly hypothetical, and just, we had talked about wanting to have this conversation. And so it's not like the screening committee's reached out and said, hey, we've got these questions, X, Y, Z.
Want to know, ABC,
yeah, so this might be mute, but, just trying to work through it. And it's kind of a tricky one, because there is, there's pros and cons to both ways. And so if we don't make a decision tonight, it's okay. But if we don't make a decision tonight, I want to know what information we need. And maybe it's just time, but what information we need to think about or bring forward to be able to make a decision, because I think we could slice this and dice this either way, but we want to kind of eventually make a decision, because we're going to need to actually run through this process, and our goal is to
That
not
might
have
be
any delays.
helpful too, though, too, if all
Yep.
of a sudden we heard from NESDEC and they were like, 6 candidates need to know ASAP.
Yep,
like
yep. So
that-
we could, and that could be something there, and we could go from there if we do have that. And we could also have Ms. Russo reach out and say, please let us know if people are inquiring about this. So we could do that as well. Mr. Waterman?
I'm just wondering, last year, if I do recall, we had a number of applicants drop out during the interview phase. Is that accurate? Jenny, do you
I
remember?
have not a clue.
Jen,
I don't know if
think
that's
you
I don't know if that information, if that folks dropped out during the interview process.
I don't know, Jen, did they?
Unclear.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Great question.
I
think the biggest thing.
I think, but what we heard from NESDEC is, or from other people, maybe it wasn't NESDEC, just from other people in the community, was that people did not apply. I know so-and-so would have applied if it wasn't.
Yeah, because we were upfront about it in that time, that it was going to be a public interview. We wanted to make sure that people knew that before they applied, or as they applied, or whatever.
Yep. And so unclear on your direct question, Ms. Rodman, we were definitely, that's definitely possible. I think we just have some anecdotal thoughts on it. And then watching it play out, I think people maybe understood why folks wouldn't want to do that. But then also, knowing that, Massachusetts does do that, that South Kingstown did it as well. And again, kind of weighing the pros and cons of, making sure that people feel very confident in who we pick and that we were transparent in that process. And what are other ways that we could do that? Because executive session interview to me is hard to convey transparency with, right? If nobody knows who was in the pool, if nobody knows anything, and all you get is the day that we approve a contract, that, is when the community finds out who something is, including the building administrators, including the teachers. Like, that feels like a lot for a position that has such an impact on a community and on a school district that, like, immensely needs a leader right now. And so that's where I'm not leaning in a certain direction, but that's the case I could make for having a transparent one. I do completely agree with Mr. Bridy that the setting is not this stage by any means. I think we would want a much more comfortable setting, and that the administration building would give that. And then also making sure that we have really clear parameters on the questions and kind of the conversation, and making sure that if it is very transactional, which the last one was, that we're very clear that that's intentional, and that we're not doing follow-up questions on purpose and different things, and what is the value and information that we need as a committee to make a decision. Jenny, go ahead.
If we do it at the administrative building, would we have it just so that people are actually in the audience, or more just online?
Yeah, so because of the Open Meetings Act, unless we were in executive session, we would have to be able to, it would be open to the public, and so folks would be able to attend. I believe there's no, like that, it's either executive session or it's that, but great clarifying question. And then we would, I do believe that we have the
Yeah, that's where I was going to weigh in. I might recommend the media center.
Or the town hall, maybe? Town hall?
We're not sure what the capacity of town hall is. I don't think it's definitely smaller than here, but it's not significantly larger than what the administration building can have. So that's something we can consider. Right. But I think it sounds like we have some consensus is if we do a public interview process, that we'll try to find a space that is not on a stage in a large auditorium. So there seems to be, am I hearing the committee correctly?
Yeah, I think so. One other thing, I know we had asked publicly at one other meeting that if people had thoughts, like people in the community, like pro, con, like public, not public, and we really only got one email on that subject. I didn't know if there was a way to maybe put that back out again to staff, teachers, and community members, like, not that would necessarily mean like, hey, if you say interview them in town square, we're going to do that, but just to try to get some input. I don't want to put any more work on the administration, but just like a quick Google form or something, like, how would you want to see this done? Somebody might have a fabulous idea that we haven't thought of yet.
Mike, could you do a quick survey?
So I guess the question from the committee to the administration is, what's a way that we could efficiently and effectively, like, maybe get some input from the building leaders or the teachers on, like, what a process to hire the superintendent in this district, like, what would they feel might be effective for them? And we obviously have a very thoughtful screening committee. that has been selected by the prior school committee with different roles, making sure to include folks that are in the different buildings, et cetera. But is there any way, I want to balance we have many priorities, and then also, the value and what we'll be able to do with that information, but any thoughts on that suggestion?
If you were to do a survey, my recommendation would that it not be open-ended, meaning as far as people giving ideas. If you've got a couple of options that you wanted to give, whether it's, would you prefer it be done in an executive session? Would you prefer it be done in a public session in a large auditorium? Would you prefer it be done in a public session in a smaller area, such as the high school media center? My concern would be if we are putting out a survey. I know from putting out surveys and reading the results, we've had 12 to 1,500 responses on some of them, and going through that information and formulating it is, when it's open-ended, is incredibly time-consuming and sometimes just leads to more questions and not the clarification. So I would recommend providing options where folks can choose.
Sorry, I just looked over at Joni and Bob, and they both look like they need M&Ms, which I don't think I have.
So not to prolong the discussion.
Yeah, no worries.
Is there a way to do the majority of the interview in an executive session with then a few questions or one or two, something more simple?
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I have seen that where I work. I've seen the actual interview questions be done with just like the committee, but then a public presentation of kind of philosophy and different things like that. And so that could be perhaps a good compromise. It would be public, but then it wouldn't be that like answering the questions on demand kind of vibe. And so there could be something there.
But I feel like then you could have it here, we could have it in the media center, then they could come up here and do a presentation or however.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting perspective. And I've seen that, like I said, go well for me at my work, because at least then the community gets an opportunity to see folks, but then they're not kind of like under that scope and that eye of having to answer the questions perfectly in front of the community, and they can prepare, et cetera. And when we've done those presentations, we haven't taken questions, or we've taken like prepared questions. So like, then they do a presentation and they answer one question from a student, one question from an administrator, one question from a community member, something like that. So it's an interesting suggestion, yeah. Other thoughts on, I do think, although I always like a good survey, that kind of the value and the time balance might be difficult in this scenario. But if the folks watching, or any community members or teachers or students or anyone does have any perspective, they most certainly can email us. We have the school committee email address that hits all of us, that I think is on the website now. And so maybe just getting some feedback from folks if they want to share it electronically that way. Other thoughts, because I do want to move the conversation forward, but I do think Ms. Hoskins' suggestion of perhaps a combination could be effective, but that would definitely result in the finalist having to be public. And so that would just be something that we would have to consider and want to be transparent with the applicants about. So any thoughts on the opposite? So maybe we don't need to, I think, have all the details, but being able to communicate to NASDAQ, yes, we are probably going to have a public component of this interview process. Like, where are we on that? And if we feel like we want to make a motion, I would definitely welcome one at any point.
I could, what was done in South Kingstown relative to the survey was that the consultant asked the general public, what qualities are you looking for in a superintendent? And then that was compiled, and the top 3 to 5 qualities were presented to the school committee as part of their deliberations. And then the other section was the questions that you're talking about. The questions came through for example, the union leadership. Questions were submitted to the president of the unions, and those questions were then forwarded to the consultant. And then they were added into the general questions that were provided by the consultant to the school committee. I think there were a total of 10 to 12 questions during the public interview.
Yeah, so I think that is really interesting as well. And I know that at one point, but when we started this process before us, NASDAQ did do some community outreach and different things, but a lot has changed since then. And so maybe working with them on, I like that concept of getting some feedback on what qualities, are we looking for in a leader, to give some direction both to the screening committee and to us. I think is an interesting point, especially because that first initial part of the process happened a bit ago, and some things have changed since then. And I also like the suggestion that, or what South Kingstown did about allowing folks to submit questions. I think that that's an interesting and nice way to involve the community as well. And so I would also advocate for, if we are doing some sort of transparent process where the last couple of candidates would be public, I would also advocate for, as part of their interview process, having at least them see a couple of the school buildings and different things. I think it's important to remember that we're trying to really entice and engage folks to accept a position if offered, and so taking them around and maybe having some part of that process I think is important too. So that would be something you wouldn't do if it was completely not, if all the candidates' names were not provided to the community, but if we are, I would advocate that that be part of the process as well. Do we have a motion, or are we just, where are we at?
Do we have to, or are we still just?
I feel like we have to.
Yeah, I
mean,
think
this process is so tight at this point. We're at almost the end of March. Okay. We're starting the process,
Let me
and
see.
not letting these people know what the process is going to be.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion?
Do you want me to try it? I think I can do it.
Okay.
I'll see if I can get it off my head, and then we can always, if I have a second to my motion, we could always amend it as needed. But so I would move that we have the superintendent final interview process be in front of the community via a presentation or some sort of formal like conversation, with the interview being an executive session, therefore making the process transparent but also comfortable for the applicants. Okay, so we have a motion for myself and a second from Ms. Lima, and we'll open it up for discussion. Hearing kind of the conversation we've had and the research that's done, I really think being as transparent as possible to get buy-in from the community is essential, which is why I made the motion, but I also very much appreciated Jenny's suggestion of doing the interview process in the executive session so that the candidates can be as comfortable as possible, and also Mr. Bridie's suggestion of doing it in a location that isn't as intimidating as an auditorium. And so I think that hybrid will allow us to make the candidates really comfortable, but I do think transparency at that point in the process is really important for the community, and making sure that especially teachers and students and community members are confident in the leader that we're picking, and that we can do some of these other things to also get some feedback from the community as well. Other discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Okay, any opposed, any abstentions, motion carries. So thank you so much for that discussion. I know it was a bit, but I think it's really important that we get this one right, as the next leader of our district is going to be a really important decision. And so we'll make sure to communicate that to Ms. Russo so that it can get communicated to NASDAQ, and I look forward to hearing an update from the screening committee once they're able to meet, and we'll also make sure that any conflicts with the dates get resolved if possible. Okay, moving on to the next item. The item is the Munis system upgrade support, and so can we get a motion, at least for discussion, so that we can have Mr. Waterman explain this one to us.
So moved.
Okay, so we have a motion for Mr. Case. Do we have a second? Second for Ms. Lima. Was that you, Jen? Oh, sorry, I was looking down. Thank you. And so we'll open it up to discussion, and so I'll turn it over, I believe, to Mr. Waterman to explain to us this one.
Thank you. The Munis software is the software that we do all of our business and accounting, process payroll, keep the budget, pay our bills. It is due for an upgrade. That is the final upgrade date from the vendor is October 31st. It's been a process that was started a year ago when we had a full finance office. It has been a process that has been delayed, not just by us, but the vendor has also moved our date back, as they're trying to move many clients. So If we had a full finance office, I would not be making this request here today. However, we have no choice but to complete this upgrade by October 31st. So I reached out to the town to see, because the town also uses the same software package, to see how they are handling their upgrade that they are currently underway on. I believe their upgrade may be completed. I believe they have an April or May targeted date. So last spring, they went out to bid to bring in a company to help them. The company did help them, did their initial review, spent many hours working their upgrade. During that time, the town, I heard this from their finance folks, actually decided to end their engagement, and they brought in a full-time employee to not only help with this upgrade, but to manage, it's called Munis, to manage their Munis system and also serve some roles in the finance office. I reached out to that company earlier this month or last month and spoke with them as they had won the bid and asked, inquired about their services, shared with them where they were, and they gave me a proposal which would take approximately 150 hours, up to 150 hours, to evaluate where we are in the process. And then from there, they would give us a cost for them to complete the upgrade. The cost for them to evaluate where we are at 150 hours was between $27,000 and $28,000. So I gave them, I asked them, I said, can you tell me what a total project completion would be? And it was somewhere in the range of it'd be looking around $200,000. So I reached out to Munis at that point and said, and simply said where we are. We're short finance folks. We've never, nobody, the one person who is in our finance department has never done an upgrade. What services can you provide to us to help us through this upgrade? And they said that they don't provide upgrade service, but they referred us to a firm that they've referred other clients to. So I engaged with this other firm, Steph Russo, who's one of our former controllers, and actually one of our retired controllers, reviewed their proposal. The three current employees met with them on a phone call, had a question and answer, and they sent us a proposal, which is what I'm asking for approval tonight, for a total completion of not to exceed 400 hours of work at a total cost, including 2 on-site visits, for a total cost of, and I don't have the exact dollar amount from me, it was 83, it was less than 84,000, but it was 83,000.
Sorry, yep, 83920.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so further discussion on this motion?
I have a question. So you said it had to be completed by October 31st. How long does the process take?
So I actually asked that question today. So we will, once we are ready to move forward, we will engage with Munis and say, what is our upgrade date? Because they actually give us the date of upgrade. So we have from last year, we have an upgrade date of June 6th, I believe, and Munis knows that we're not hitting that date because they haven't been engaged with us, we haven't been engaged with them, so they know that date's moving. But I asked the vendor, I said, if this was approved tonight and we signed tomorrow and you moved forward, what is the earliest possible date you expect this work to be done? And they said the earliest possible date, barring any hiccups, and with us being able to engage with them at the drop of a hat whenever they wanted. So like we're talking ideal circumstances, they would be able to go live mid to end July. Now that would not be a great time for our finance office with July 1st being the start of the new year. So we would have the flexibility, in an ideal setting, we would be going live sometime in early October.
Mike, just a clarifying question for process. Sure. Because of the amount of this, don't we have to get bids?
So that anything over, we would have to get bids. And one of the things in using the I was hoping to be able to, with the other company, use the RFP that they had already done because they were willing to honor the same terms. But what I can say is that this proposal I have in front of you is significantly less than the bidder that was selected by the town.
Yeah, and I greatly appreciate that, but I feel like I'm not going to be able to support your request because I feel like we have to follow our purchasing practices and get multiple bids to be able to assess if this company, like, even though I know that it's less than what the town used, like, I'm concerned about breaking a rule because I believe I just looked it up, it's anything over 5,000, right?
I think it's been changed to 9,000 now. The purchasing guidelines were refined. When were those refined? I believe those were refined
Yeah, I think it's
last June.
9,000 now. We did
but
it this
still-
year. Yeah, no, and I agree with you on that, and that's
Yeah.
my concern too. But I guess second to that concern is that the town is doing it themselves. Assuming we eventually have a finance department, is this something we can do ourselves before October 31st? And if we don't complete it by October 31st, what happens?
We don't process payroll. We don't pay bills.
Okay, so that's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And I've asked, is there a chance that October 31st date can move? And they've already, so initially this drop dead date was last year, and they're also having the same capacity issue. So even if on tonight's agenda we were hiring a finance director and a controller to fill our 2 vacancies, even if those people were already trained in this specific software package, trying to do all the backlog work, not to mention all the current work, would still make an October date very challenging.
All right, so I guess what I would say is, again, I want to say yes so bad, but I want to make sure that we're following our policies. And I'm happy to call a special meeting if it's a time issue, but I feel like I need to see the bids on this because of the price of the cost. So I'm going to have to vote no on this one. But I would, if we need to help expedite the timing for it or anything, Mike, please let us know.
It will just be tough, given very tight timelines as far as to even get an RFP out there. I understand the policies. I understand this is going to be a very heavy lift.
I know, I'm sorry.
So what other options are there? Is there any agreement that we could have the person from the town come help us? Can we hire a temp to come in to do this who's trained in Munis? Like, what are the outside of the box options for this?
That's what this is. This is hiring the people. I mean, anybody who knows Munis, so the first consultant was billing at $250 an hour. This one's billing at $180 an hour. We'd very quickly be over. I mean, a few days' work and we'd be over. We'd be in the same boat we are now. The town is currently, the town is, I can certainly ask if the town can, but they are in the midst of their upgrade and budget season, and this person is working in the finance office. They're not familiar with our workflows, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We are set up differently.
Is there something that we could utilize the RFP that they previously used to use the language from that?
That would be my, I believe Bob Carenti calls it R&D, rip and duplicate. That would
I call
probably
it
be what I
professionally
would do.
borrowing. Other questions, considerations? We actually don't have a motion. We just have a motion to discuss right now, so I don't. There's no action, but yeah.
So Mike, if you go to RFP and you don't have anything in a timely fashion, can we revisit this, or no, this goes away?
I don't know that answer.
Unless the number was less than $9,000, there's no consideration like for a single bid, unless the single source form, I believe, would, like, if there's a justification for single source, that could be an option, but I imagine that there's other companies that do this. 2 bids?
I mean, just by virtue of the fact that you're talking about 2 different companies
Yeah.
that fall under a sole source.
Yeah, so.
Is there any like emergency like bypass switch to get around the RFP option in a situation where like our payroll is going to be shut off in October if we can't do this?
Does that rule, the rule comes from the town, I assume, Andrew? That's the one I'm looking at. Is it a school committee policy or is it a town of North Kingstown policy?
It's a statute.
It's a
4555-9.
Yes and no.
Procurement shall not exceed the aggregate amount of $10,000 for construction and $5,000 for all other purchases, unless they go out to bid.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
No, so I think the bid is unfortunately the only thing we can do. And so hopefully the town's language will be able to help move it forward. And then, like I said, if we're able to do anything and you need us to call a special meeting to move it forward, I feel very badly, Mike, but I just want to make sure that we're following it, especially for a purchase like this. But I completely understand the need. Any other discussion on this one?
No, I agree with you. It's unfortunate. I wish that we could, but I just, especially since it's statutory and not even like a one of our policies that we might be able to find
Suspend or
some ways temporarily suspend.
And so just a point of clarification, if I was bringing forward the first company tonight, we would be able to accept them at a cost of $200,000. And I know that is not
Yeah.
directed at you. That is
Don't
just
hate the player, hate the game. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I get it. And that is unfortunate, but yeah.
Understood.
I know. Okay, any other discussion on this one? Okay. Thank you so much for that, Mike, and hopefully we'll be able to move it forward quickly. The next item on the agenda is district forums and document language. Can I get a motion for discussion?
So moved.
Okay, motion from Ms. Lima. Do we have a second? Second from Mr. Case. And so I'll turn it over to Ms. Lima for discussion.
So this is just a follow-up from the recommendation that was made to the full school committee by the DEI subcommittee at their June 22nd, 2022 meeting. I just am hoping to get an update from administration on the request. And just as a reminder, that request was at that time that all district forms and documents, including Aspen and Canvas, be updated to reflect gender-neutral language, be inclusive of all family types, allow for multiple options for racial and ethnic identity, and be available in a family natives language. The goal would be to have these updated by the beginning of the 2022 school year. Now, obviously, that didn't happen, for the start of this school year, but I'd like to see something implemented and ready to go by the start of the 2023 school year. I know things have been crazy this year. There's been turnover and everything, and I understand that there may be issues with Aspen and Canvas, but I was hoping that we might be able to make some progress on our own internal district forms and letterhead. So I was hoping for some type of feedback.
Okay, great. And so just to clarify too, I don't think we wanted to, I think for this agenda item, just having a conversation about making sure that the current school committee is aware of the outstanding requests from last June, because we have had some transition. And also, I'm always curious when we're working with the administration on kind of needs and support. We obviously have multiple priorities and different things, but also honoring the past school committee and the request that was made and voted on at a former meeting. And so there's kind of that balance. And so, when looking at this and thinking about it, and actually we had an actual question about it that was not actually related to this agenda item as far as the registration form. Something that I think is really important, and I'm not sure if it should land with the policy subcommittee or if the administration wants to take a stab at it, is I definitely think with things like this, having some consistency is immensely important, and some agreed upon consistency so that individuals, when they're doing different things or in their different roles, don't have to make judgment calls or make decisions, and that way we're not inadvertently doing something that is inconsistent, I guess, across the board. And so I don't know if there was any clarification there. And I'd also be curious on kind of where some of the barriers are for the administration, because I know from working with these hardworking folks, it's never due to a lack of want. It's always, something else. And so I'd be curious about that as well. Other discussion? Jenny, do you have something I couldn't tell?
No, I just think that I think some of it had to do with the barriers, like having to do with the state systems and the way everything talks to each other.
Yeah, Mike, any thoughts on this one?
So with regard specifically to the registration, because that's the most current, that was clearly a formatting issue. The person who had created that form had copied that question from her previous one, and if you look, it was the title of the question and the actual description of the question didn't even match. It was something that, knowing this person, I'm guessing they were working on it, got a phone call, got interrupted, so that we were able to very quickly resolve. Certainly some guidance on consistency would be helpful, but quite honestly, a day longer than 24 hours is what's necessary to get this work done at this point.
Yeah, completely understood.
People who would be working on this are currently working two roles. So really, it is a manpower issue, it is a time issue, it is when you say when you say district forms and documents, that is a wide umbrella. So perhaps an area to focus it, and then perhaps focus it in an area that's fully staffed and established would be wonderful. And especially if we're talking about stuff we have control over. When you're talking about systems like Aspen and Canvas, Aspen is tied to the state reporting system. So we have to really, and we get a daily check on invalid data fields.
Putting aside Aspen and Canvas, because I understand that those are hardware systems, I think the initial request as we presented it back in June was even to start with something simple as our letterhead and just insert gender on there to change it from not discriminate on the basis of sex to change it to just not discriminate on the basis of gender. So where would something like that fall? Like just a simple change of our letterhead. I say simple, understanding that it's not, but...
Yeah, great question. I don't know where that starts, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know if that, are you talking about I call it the blurb that's really small?
Yes, on the bottom of the page, yep.
So, yeah, I don't know where that, is that a universally adopted, is that specific to, is that citing any laws or anything? These are all questions that I really don't know the answers to.
So just for clarification, because I wasn't here when the original motion was made, so some of the forms, I'm assuming, Mike, would land in kind of the tech land, right? So like when you're thinking about like programming, Aspen and different things, but then some are probably, if a teacher's creating a Google form, things like that. And so there's probably a wide variety of levels of difficulty, and then also folks that would be touching district forms and whatever the other word, it was district forms and something else, right? Documents, thank you. And so would something that maybe be able to help move this forward is if we, and Jen, I don't want to delay it, but I want to try to figure out a way for collaboration, because I know there's so many priorities, is if maybe we defer it back to the DEI subcommittee to maybe provide some guidance and some direction, and then also maybe some help with prioritization.
Yeah, to help identify, for example, the letterhead.
I'm happy to do that, but I would like to make the ask that letterhead form get changed. We asked for this in June, and I'm trying to be patient.
No, it's okay, I understand.
We asked for it in June of 2022, and that one to me seems to be a pretty low-hanging fruit and would just show that there is some movement being made on that.
Yeah, I totally understand. I do agree on that one with Mr. Waterman, is that we'll just have Andrew take a check and see if that was something that was approved by a school committee that we would have to do something to augment it, because usually something official like that might be an official thing that the district had approved. But I am most certainly willing to have that conversation with the district lawyer, and then also look back into the archives to see if we need to have something on the agenda for the school committee to officially approve that language change, so then we can go forward there. Something else that I've noticed when making changes like that is giving some clarity to folks about what happens with documents that have the old things. So do we use them up? Do we destroy them and then move forward? And so when we do have that conversation, thinking through about some of those things to make sure that we're considering district budget impact and things like that.
Do we actually have like actual paper letterhead still? Or
I bet we do somewhere.
Yeah.
Some pile somewhere, yeah. So just things like that I think are important to consider. And so I understand the urgency and I understand the frustration with the delay, but also I want to make sure that we're trying to assist in helping be able to move it forward.
100%,
and so,
and I will very happily provide some assistance and some guidance with language and priorities on forms, but I would like to...
But again, not you, Jen. I'd love for it to go back to the DEI subcommittee for that. Great. And then definitely thinking about possibly also maybe the policy committee also, Mike, to give you all some guidance and some help there as well. But maybe that can be secondary after the focus and prioritization. But I'll own the letterhead piece and see what we can figure out and see if we can get that on the next agenda. Any other discussion on this item?
No, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, everybody good? Okay. So we'll move forward onto new business. Oh, good, just a quick one, the calendar. Okay, so under new business, the next item is the SY 2023-2024 school calendar. Can we get a motion on that? You can do it however you want.
I would like to have some discussion, but I would like to table this.
I was just going to say, instead of tabling
there-
it, yeah, can we make a motion for administration to come back to us with the suggestions that the teachers recommended?
I agree.
Yeah.
Can we do
Yeah, so somebody make a motion if you
I
want.
would like to make a motion that the task the superintendent with looking at the adjustments to the calendars that were made, including the half-days, for sure, looking at adding back in the 22nd of November, moving April 23rd.
Could we, oh, sorry.
What
I would, hold on one second. Actually, can we do, I'd actually, and I very much appreciate that we heard from some of the teachers today, but I'd love to hear from the administration too on the calendar. And so can we just open it up for discussion? I'll turn it over to the folks that worked on the calendar to hear that. And then if we have some clarification,
All right,
we
so
can
I'll
go
just
from
make a
there.
motion to have the
Just discuss.
superintendent, revisit, come back with
Yes, we'll
adjustments
do,
to the calendar.
yes, we'll do a motion for a review of the calendar. And then do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so second from Ms. Lima, we'll open it up for discussion, and we'd love to turn it over to the administration to walk us through the calendar. Sorry, we got ahead of ourselves because we're tired. Come on up, Bob.
Thank you. You hear me okay? Well, good evening, everyone. It has been a long evening. Just quickly initiate the conversation about the calendar.
We can't hear you, I'm sorry, or I can't hear you.
Is this better?
Much better, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. And I know it's been a long night. I think it's important to know that, based on my experience as a central office administrator, especially as a superintendent, conversations around the calendar seem to go on for some time. And you're looking at at the first draft. So I would imagine that we'll probably be making some changes to what you have in front of you. But I do think it's important for you to know what has gone into the conversation about creating this calendar. And we did meet with administrators. We did meet with the union. And the union, just so that you all know, had no issues with the calendar that we presented. We consulted with the Jamestown school system, specifically Dr. Ken Duva. Dr. Clark was involved from a professional development standpoint. And truth be told, and I think you all know that providing the professional development around right to read has handcuffed us to a certain extent. Mike was involved in the conversation, and Jules Palazzo really helped us put everything together. So that being said, I heard what was said, and we did consider many of the things that the Wellness Committee did recommend. And we did, so for example, like the conversation about half days, and it doesn't mean that we can't revisit this, and I'm hearing that you would like us to do that. But we did consider the impact that it would have on parents. So that was a big part of our conversation. And again, it doesn't mean that we can't go back and reconsider those days.
And particularly elementary age students, parents of elementary age students.
So again, I think it's really difficult to reach consensus on a calendar, given all of the factors that come into play. But we were able to reach a consensus. And again, I don't know that there's a difference between the Wellness Committee made up of educators and the union made up of educators. And the union, like I said, they had no issues with the calendar. That being said, doesn't mean that we can't go back and make some changes. So, and I can't stress enough how the impact of this, right to read professional development that we are required to do has handcuffed us. But we do expect to have some flexibility in what we offer to staff from a professional development standpoint, because as we heard tonight, there are already some staff that have met their right to read requirements. So we have been giving that some consideration. So I don't know if it's necessary for us to go through the calendar. I mean, I just think some of the highlights just off the top of my head, and I have it written down, and I know you want to revisit this anyway, but we decided to do 3 of the professional developments days, of the 4 professional development days, the last week in August, and we wanted to do the 29th, 30th, and 31st, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that last week in August. We felt that it was appropriate to give everyone Friday off, and Monday is Labor Day anyway, so they would have a long weekend from Friday the 1st to Monday the 4th, and all students would start on the 5th. We did have a conversation about the day before Thanksgiving, and everyone was in agreement, and we again reached consensus with all of those groups that I mentioned that we would be in school, or North Kingstown would be in school on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And by the way, and I forgot to mention this, and I do think it's important, we used the RIDE calendar, that calendar that was sent to all of the districts statewide. We used that as a starting point for our conversation. All of the holidays, students will be in school, and again, that was a RIDE calendar recommendation. For example, historically, Good Friday has been a day that everyone has had off, but I think there was consensus on the fact that it was unfair for one religious holiday to be off and not those others. So that was definitely a part of the conversation as well. Christmas vacation would be that last week in December. February vacation is back. That was also on the state recommended calendar. I think everyone was in agreement that we needed to provide that week off for everyone, and that is on the calendar that we recommended. RIDE did initially have a different week for April vacation. They did revise it, and the week of the 15th of April is now the April vacation day. And last but not least, I guess, all of this being considered, the last day of school would be June 14th without any snow days or any other changes to the calendar. So that was, our thinking in putting this calendar together, and I do think that, we did expect that there would be some conversation and perhaps some revision to what is being presented to you this evening.
And Bob, if I may I think you may have missed one date. April 23rd is a very awkward date. That is a presidential primary date, and that is coming off of the statewide calendar. During presidential elections, many, I don't want to say all because there could be one or two that isn't, but many of our buildings are used as polling places.
Mike, is that why the 23rd was picked?
Yes, and that appeared on the statewide calendar, and I had to do a double take as to why are we, and I wonder if that's initially.
I do agree that many kids are not going to be in school on the 22nd.
So, and let me raise this as a parent who would love to take my kids to Disney, because we just went through this in February, right, where we had a 3-day week with a very short work week, and I can tell you our attendance numbers were down. What would be the benefit, or what would be the, as a parent, looking at having April break off and then taking a 3-day, the kid's only missing 3-day week and going to Disney during a non-prime week? That would just be my concern with doing that Monday. But yeah, that Tuesday the 23rd is certainly not an ideal placement, but one we don't have any control over.
That makes sense. I
Yep.
just,
Yep, let's see if Bob, if there's anything else, and then I'll open it up for questions. Wait, hold on, I want to just make sure that Bob is good on the presentation. Okay, great. Yeah, and I do, I want to thank everybody. I know a lot of work and a lot of consideration went into this, and to Bob's point, like, we're never going to find a perfect calendar where everyone's happy, so, but I do appreciate the conversation, and appreciate the different views and perspectives on things as we try to make the conversation, and also, you know, trying to really center, of course, teacher wellness, and then also, you know, student wellness and learning. And so I'll open it up for conversation, and Gabriel has something to say. Gabriel, go ahead.
I will do it quickly.
Oh, wait, no, Gabriel gets to go first.
What's that?
Sorry, Gabriel.
So the first thing I noticed, it says the high school senior project day is May 18th. That looks like a Saturday according to the calendar. I know that's usually on a Thursday, so that might that be a typo?
Yes, that may have been. So when this calendar was developed, it was making a copy of the last one. That may absolutely. I'll check with Jules and.
Gabe's like, I'm not coming in on a Saturday to do my senior project. No, it's a very good catch. Good job.
I'm graduating, so I wouldn't have to deal with it anyways.
Good pickup.
But one more aesthetic thing: the November 7th parent-teacher conference day. That is green, and the no school days are a reddish-orange. I would think that it might make sense to change the color of that. Just in case if anyone is colorblind, just so they don't think it's a no school day. It could easily be missed.
That is a no school day.
Oh.
But that's a special, so that is a special day in that there's no school for students, but teachers in K-8 come in, and that is the day they meet with parents.
My mistake.
No worries, though, because I think your point is valid, though, Gabriel, because if it was confusing to you, it might be confusing to others, and so something just to consider might be the color coding. And I think Gabriel brings up a really good point about making sure that we're clear with whatever we're doing in considering the fact that some people are colorblind and might not be able to see difference. So I think having it listed in different places helps, but also considering that is important, because if it was confusing to one, it could be confusing to others. So any other thoughts, Gabriel?
Yes, I agree with the sentiments provided by the teachers regarding having Monday or Friday professional development days, especially with the March day. Instead of March 5th, I would say maybe Monday, March 11th. In the past 2 years, the March Professional Development Day has been on the Monday after the closing Sunday of the musical, and in my 2 years having that has been extremely helpful to the students in the musical. We have a very late night the previous night, and it is much appreciated by us not having to come to school the next day. So if that means anything, I think students would appreciate having the day after the musical off.
I think it means something.
And the only other thing, and I know some of these dates, especially the right to read dates, those are tied to line up with when the teachers, so the teachers have certain deadlines on when coursework must be done, because we still have between 45 and 50% of our teachers about 50 to 55% of our teachers will complete their right to read training this year, because depending on what you teach, you have a different amount of work to do. However, the other 45 to 50%, and also any new staff who will require what the staff is doing this year, they have deadlines on when that must be met. And I know Dr. Clark was, because we were originally looking, I think we originally had put it in that week, 1 week further, but that was going to not give the teachers the time they need to complete their coursework. So I know we are somewhat limited to that week. I know the other thing we tried to balance on this is not so much at the middle and high school levels where they have a day 1, day 2 rotation, and if you have a day, you skip it. But if you're a elementary child and art is your favorite class and it happens on a Monday, you happen to miss a lot of art classes. So there was some attention paid to trying to balance out where during the week it fell. as well. So there are, as you mentioned, there are many considerations that do go into this.
Yep, thanks, Gabe. Jen, did you have something?
Just really quickly, I think that, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I would like to see this come back with consideration given to the PD days being moved to the Mondays and the Fridays and to the half-day PDs that the teachers had requested. I think it's important for what the teachers requested. And just quickly, I know you spoke about the fact that you discussed with the teachers the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, but I'm not quite sure that the parents in the district will agree with you about not having that Wednesday before Thanksgiving off. So that's something to consider also, that we've had that for at least the past 5 years, so losing that could ruffle some feathers. I agree with you about not celebrating any religious holidays, but I know in the past the district has had massive amounts of call-outs and actually had to reverse the decision one year to not have Good Friday. So I'm fine with not including it, but I just want to make sure that the district has a plan to deal with any call-outs that day, so that we don't end up in a situation like that again. So
Your point is well taken. That certainly did come up in our conversation.
Yeah, I do appreciate that day is not a day off, just because, to be consistent, if we're not taking Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, like I understand that students most certainly need the accommodations to take those days, and that would also happen for the other religious holidays that are noted on this calendar, and I imagine some others. But I think some consistency there is actually good. So
because that would be my next lead in it, that we're going to add Good Friday in. I would like to have discussions about what other holidays we're adding back
exactly.
in.
Something that I just wanted to note is if that right to read days, and this is like literally just not a typo, but clarity for some of the folks and the teachers, if I understand that we'll be having the teachers that still need to complete the right to read days, we'll be doing those on the 16th and the 5th, but it sounds like that will be a generic professional development day for those who have completed that, and so maybe just in the revision providing some clarity on maybe just putting, PD day / right to read complete, something like that, so that folks understand that if they are done with right to read, that they're still coming in, they're not coming in for PD.
The statute says any days that we reduce from the 180, we must be dedicated to right to read.
Okay.
So folks who have completed right to read will look at what they've learned during right to read and implement that during that day. So the statute.
What a journey. Okay.
The statute well.
Yep. No, I understand. Understood why it has to be noted that. So then maybe it's a communication thing. But it looks like Bob made some notes, so we'll see what that can look like. Any other thoughts or discussion for consideration before we see the calendar again?
Can I just forgive me, Ms. Sleemy.
One other thing is the Rhode Island state calendar lists October 9th as Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day. And coming from me when you would discuss the calendar, a day for us to up that as everybody the heads up.
Yeah, so could we look at, and perhaps, I don't know if RIDE's putting out any consideration on the calendars as far as Columbus Day and kind of the history and controversy surrounding that on calendars. I can imagine there's some discussions going on at RIDE as well.
Yeah, RIDE has it listed on their calendar that way. It is listed.
Different. Yeah, so if the administration could look into that, that would be greatly appreciated. Any other considerations right now? We obviously have some things, and then we can have this on the next agenda. If anyone has any additional thoughts, please provide it with the administration. And again, thank you so much for working on this. I know it's very challenging with the additional professional development, as well as trying to balance all the different things and making sure that we're educating students. So very, very much appreciate the second look at it. Thank you. Okay, so we are moving on. We are tabling item B, so that is actually going to help us in our time crunch. So we look forward to seeing a contract for the Director of Pupil Personnel, correct?
No.
We're not tabling that?
No, I'm not recommending a table. I'm recommending that I'm going to withdraw this appointment.
Okay, so we're withdrawing we're withdrawing it from the agenda. Okay. So that is, I don't think we need to do anything for that officially other than Frank withdrawing it. So we'll withdraw that and move forward. And so the next item on the agenda is the replacement of a piece of playground equipment at Stony Lane Elementary. Can I get a motion so we can discuss?
So moved.
Okay, motion from Mr. Case, second from Ms. Lima. I'll turn it over to Mr. Waterman to present.
Yes, this is a
quickly.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is
quickly.
This is a request from Stony Lane to replace a piece of regularly broken equipment with a like piece of equipment. The funding for this comes from a grant that Stony Lane received from Representative Casimiro, and the other half of the funding will come from PTO sources.
Okay. Other discussion on this item? Just clarification on the grant. Did it come from, I saw the check from the general treasurers. Was it like a grant that they had applied for or
Correct.
something? What was, do we know what the grant was?
I did at one point. Let me.
It's okay. I was just curious about what kind of funding sources Stony Lane had reached out and applied for. But that's okay. That's not what this is. Okay. So, other discussion on this one?
And this is a sole source item?
Yes, there's only one vendor
Okay.
what I suspect this company does is they only allow one vendor in a territory to have access to the equipment.
Okay.
Yep, that makes sense. Just another clarifying question. For the piece that is broken, so the funding, the check that they have is obviously for the $5,000. Does the PTO have the remaining money secured to move forward with this project?
They do have it budgeted, yes.
Budgeted? Do they have it actually?
They have it in their budget of how they're going to spend the money that they have, yes.
Okay, so they do have the actual money in their bank account?
I confirm with the principal that they have it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other clarifying questions, discussion on this? Rob, what's the face?
No, I was just looking, it says it's a House grant instead of a Senate grant, so it came from the House of Representatives.
Oh, understood. Oh, that's why it's crossed, the HOU is House, right. Understood. Any other discussion on this? So it's
my only comment, and I'm going to vote to approve this, is that I think it's wonderful that Rep. Casimiro arranged this with Stony Lane, but I would like to see the same type of grants be extended to the other schools. Just, I don't know if this is something specific, like you said, that it was for a certain purpose, but if this is just a legislative grant, which I know are kind of things that she's able to secure, I would hope that all the schools will be able to take advantage of these types of things. I'm not sure if all principals know that they're able to apply for them or how to apply for them, so if there was a way that we could make sure that that information was disseminated, that would be great.
Great. Any other discussion on this? If so, if not, and we feel like we have enough information, I would ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve from Ms. Lima and a second to approve from Mr. Case. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll take the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. And that will move us on to item D, the approval of a vendor to utilize the 21st Century Technology and Future funds. Do we have a motion for this? And I would say maybe just put the motion for approval, and then we can always, even if you make that motion, doesn't mean you have to do it.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve from Ms. Lima. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Bridey, and we'll open it up to discussion. Again, Mike, I think this one is you.
Yes. So this request here tonight is not a request to spend any actual dollar amount. If you recall, in the fall, the school department, again, I don't have the exact dollar amount in front of me, was awarded somewhere between $280,000 and $290,000 for furniture and technology use. That has a hard deadline of that money must be spent, not received, by June 30th of this year. I started going down all the options, and oh my God, what you can get for furniture is mind-boggling. So I reached out to, I inquired as to what other local schools are doing, and many of them had recommended Robert Lord. Robert Lord is, and he's not a person, he's a company. He is a member of the Massachusetts Higher Ed Purchasing Collaborative, which North Kingstown is a member of. So what I am proposing, what I would like to do is as Dr. Paolucci had said when we received
I'm sorry, Mike, I got to pull this motion. There's no backup in the packet.
So there's nothing to back up, because that's what I will bring to you next.
Okay.
I'm more or less seeking permission to move in this direction.
To use the vendor. Okay.
It doesn't, so it doesn't make sense for me to move in this vendor if you're not going to support once we get there.
Okay, but there's no backup about the vendor at all? Like, there's nothing? Like, there's no written documentation at all?
There's no agreement, there's nothing we're entering into.
But there's not even like a screenshot of who they are
Yeah,
or
you
anything
can
like
withdraw
that?
your motion, Jen, that's fine.
I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Okay.
I'll move to, I don't know, open item D for discussion. Do we have a second? To
I'll second
discuss
that.
the approval?
Yeah, I'll second
Okay, so
that.
we have a second. So a new motion for myself, a second from Ms. Lima. So we'll resume discussion. And so Mike, can you clarify for me what the approval ask is right now?
So
just so I
what I'd like
understand?
to do is engage with this company who will come in and they do design work. I would show them the media centers that we would be looking to upgrade, which would be the ones not impacted by the school construction. And what they would do is they would come up with design proposals on what they would propose and recommend. They would provide samples. This would all be done off of the purchasing consortium, which is in Massachusetts, obviously a bigger state. They have an MPA, which is specific to education. That's essentially what the Massachusetts Higher Ed Purchasing Consortium is it's a master price agreement. We are able to participate in it. What they would do is they would give us proposals, options. They would even bring in samples for the folks in the school to sample, and then again, kind of like the last piece of playground equipment, they have the pricing agreements set with the vendors to provide that furniture. So what I would be doing is I'm seeking permission to go that route, and then I would be bringing those proposals back to you, and you would be approving the actual purchase.
My question would be, how much is this service going to cost, and does it fall within that same problem of the ranges? Because I know that there's definitely other ways to do this process.
So we would be looking to spend between $280,000 and $290,000 on furniture.
Not the actual furniture cost, sorry, let me clarify, the vendor part of it. Like, are we going to get in trouble for not doing, like, this is basically single sourcing a vendor where there's other companies that do this work, and so that's where my concern lies.
The state does all that vetting, and they create the list. So we just have the ability to go to the list.
So this company's on the state MPA?
Not the state MPA. They're on the Massachusetts
Yeah,
equivalent.
that's where I don't understand. If it was the Rhode Island MPA, I'd be like, great, this sounds lovely, let's go. But this is not the Rhode Island MPA, so I'm not comfortable.
It's not the Rhode Island MPA, but it's and Andrew, feel free to
Andrew's
jump
like,
in.
I got nothing for you.
This is a purchasing consortium where.
I unfortunately, I don't think I can support this one, Mike. I'm so sorry. I think for me to be able to feel confident in approving or putting forward even a motion to approve it, I totally understand that we need a company to do this. I know how difficult it is, and I've worked with folks in my professional life that do this work, but without having either a Rhode Island MPA for a company or 3 bids, like, it'd be very difficult for me to approve this motion or this request. So I'm not gonna. That's my thought on it. I don't know.
Unless anybody else feels differently, I suggest we move on.
Don't you need clarification? No, I just said it was discussed. Yep. Andrew, you checking on something, or?
Yeah, I'd like to research that Massachusetts consortium issue.
Okay. So we'll look into that, and then again, if we need to call something before our next meeting, Mike, to be able to help you move forward, please let me know. And then the next item E, I don't know if it's a formative item.
I suggest we table this because the quote that's attached has expired, and we move this for discussion at the next meeting.
The quote, in talking with Kevin Gormley, the quote is still valid. While the date
you can
on it's
attach
expired.
that to us. I'm not shouting. It's just the mic is in my face. So
I was like, Jen, that seems aggressive.
So then you can just resubmit it for the next meeting with an update stating that the quote is still valid, please.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll table item E. Correspondence, anything?
Yeah, just really quickly, we have.
Oops, sorry, hold on one second. We don't need a motion or a second to table, I don't believe. Or do we motion second and then no discussion? That's what it is. I'm sorry.
So moved.
All right, so we have thank you, Joni, for catching that. So we have a motion from Lissima. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Case. It's a motion table, so we don't need discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So moving on to correspondence, Ms. Lima.
Correspondence, really quickly. We do have an email address that allows you to email the entire school committee at once. It's schoolcommittee@nksd.net. You can find it on the district website. We're requesting that people use that moving forward, effective with our next meeting. We're going to be summarizing emails that are sent to the whole school committee during the correspondence part of the agenda, the way that the town does.
Okay, thank you very much. And, just to clarify that, people are more than welcome to email individual members of the school committee, but if they are emailing all of us, they can use that convenient tool and it will go to the entire school committee. But just a reminder to the school committee, do not reply all, because we don't want to violate the Open Meeting Act. And then for the last item, which is a subcommittee report, that's very fast. You have 2 minutes, Jen.
Luckily that meeting got canceled, so there is nothing to report. It's been rescheduled for Monday the 27th at 5 p.m. at the admin building.
Okay, so DEI subcommittee rescheduled for March 20, say it again? 27, thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn from Mr. Case, second from Ms. Hoskins. All those in favor? So moved. 9:58. Thank you so much.